710.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Yaffe?
Here.
Councilmember Chikoshe?
Here.
Councilmember Sauber?
Here.
Councilmember Reed?
Here.
Councilmember Leonard?
Here.
Vice Mayor Fuller?
Here.
Mayor Bruder?
Here.
Present.
So, I want to say that I talked to Dr. Carpin. He was unable to make it today. So he sent instead Jose Buenos and the rest of his staff, also the principal of Bay Harbor, to have a discussion with us of where we are in the reduction of students within the school and how, the project. And I know that next month, I talked to Ron, next month we should be getting our interlocal agreement back. The lawyers have worked out most of the details of what we asked for, and you should be getting that in your next packet. So, Mr. Buenos, the stage is yours.
Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members, council members, Mr. Attorney and Mr. Manager, Jose Bueno, Region Superintendent. Just to let you know that we are working on the compact. It is my understanding that the compact is sitting with your city manager now as we speak. We've been going back and forth on certain things. It's been all good news in reference to the compact. We are also aware of some of the lands, or better yet, some of the buildings that are within the town that are no longer up and running. We've been given those addresses, and that is one of the things that we're going to get started with doing. To let you know, the attendance, the registrations are down. Okay. One of the things that we promised this council, and one of the things that we did do, was at the very beginning of the school year, we implemented a little bit of a tougher registration process for our parents. I can tell you that as much as 12 to about 18 students, parents came in from the first day on, and until recently, I want to say 2 days ago, have tried to register, have not had the proper documentation, and have not come back, meaning that basically they will not have the proper documentation to be able to enroll. So we are going to be working with your manager in order to get that compact back to us, so we can then fully implement everything else that it has.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have a few.
Okay.
Jose, just what's the school population right now?
Scott? 1344.
So it is down.
Yes, sir.
Is that including pre-K?
That's the 19 kids.
Well, 18 or 18.
Yeah, so that is down. And what in the compact, because I haven't seen the draft yet, what's your proposal for the new reset of the number? What are we looking at? Because that's really what's on everyone's mind.
I think we need to look at the compact, because I don't think he has it in front of him, and that's not a fair question to ask him.
Well, do you know?
The question is an intention, right? Is there an intention to increase the number of students that you have in the
Right.
agreement?
I'm sure you're going to
Absolutely not.
Yeah. No? You're going to keep it at 900 and...
No, it was
No. It's
1,200.
1,200. We're not
1,200.
looking at increasing students coming into the town, if that's the question.
So you're going to keep it the same number that in our original agreement?
Yes, we are trying, that is what, that's our
I just want to make
intention.
sure.
May I ask a second follow-up question to that, please? Does that include after the extension is built?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, sir. I do appreciate your...
Yes, ma'am.
That was a big concern that a lot of us had, and a lot of parents have that same concern. So we just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Just so you're aware, and I'm sorry,
Okay.
Council Member Fuller, just so you're aware, in our calculation, we're looking at a decrease of about maybe 15-20% with the new building. Capacity-wise, that still puts you over the 100 capacity, which we will not, under any circumstances, I shouldn't say under any circumstances, we will continue, let me rephrase. We will continue doing the approval at the region for any type of transfers into the school, ultimately being my decision at the end of the day, and it's a more stringent process because the process usually goes through one administrative director. In this process, it goes through the administrative director, Then it goes to Mr. Bello for his approval, and then Mr. Bello needs to give it to me for my final approval.
Okay, you actually answered my...
Wait, 1 second. Can you introduce Mr.
I'm
Bello
sorry,
for
and
those of-
I apologize.
I don't think some of them know. Take his-
This is the uglier-looking version of Sally Allion, Mr. Louis Bello. Mr. Louis Bello is now one of our administrative directors. Ms. Sally Allion was promoted last year, and she is with our mental health office.
Right.
And you got promoted too.
All right, I have...
You got
I have a
promoted too,
couple
right?
questions.
No.
I don't know.
No, go ahead, I'm not ready.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure you have the information to answer this, but I remember the last time we had discussed issues regarding the school, there was the matter of the welcome notices and that whole process, the way they go out and then the ones that come back. Do we know how many, do you know anything about those statistics?
Sir, that is, as we speak, that is being negotiated through the compact. We do have it on the compact, and what we have ascertained, if I'm not mistaken, is on how we are going to mail it out. So that's part of that conversation, and the date is being moved to October? Yes, October.
Okay.
So those letters will be mailed out in October as the town manager has requested.
So the letters haven't gone out?
No, sir.
No letters have gone out yet. The other question is, what is your policy right now regarding kids that have been attending the school that it might be discovered that their address is improper or out of the district? Is there any grandfathering in?
I don't want to say not really. We take each case on a case-by-case. If the youngster is an 8th grader, chances are we are going to leave the youngster there. If the youngster is in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, we will see what the circumstances are as to why they are there. If they falsified any type of paperwork, okay? So it goes, there's a lot of things that go into play before we make a final decision as to whether that youngster stays at Bay Harbor or not.
Can I ask you something? The
Yes, ma'am.
interlocal agreement says that if somebody is not registered or in Bay Harbor, Surfside, or Bal Harbor, and they lied on their application, and they're now in 4th grade, okay, and it's discovered that they have maybe falsified some of or they double dipped 2 people in a home, what would make you, what are the guidelines in which you would remove a child? If you're saying that so that people can understand, what are the guidelines to removing a child from a school?
Once again, Madam Mayor, it depends on the circumstances of the family. It depends on the circumstances of each current issue that we may have. However, if it's a bold-out lie and they're double-dipping, like you've called it, and they're lying to us, chances are that it's not going to be a favorable decision.
Kelly?
I have a question not relating to this topic, but close. It's my understanding that when there's a threat or emergency, you have a text blast that you send out to parents. And the last time that we had an emergency, I asked one of your staff members if the council members who do not have children at the school would be able to have our phone numbers put on that list so that we could be notified, because then, we end up getting phone calls. So if you can't answer that now, I would appreciate maybe if you could take it back and consider it and get back to us.
I will, I can't answer that. However, I will definitely take it to Ms. Iraida Mendez-Cartaya, who is the Associate Superintendent that deals with intergovernmental affairs, and I'll definitely ask her to look into it and get back to you,
Okay,
Madam
thank you very much.
Councilmember.
If not, Craig, I mean, I get them. Can I forward them to Kelly and Isaac?
Or to Ron.
Or to, yeah.
Or it's wrong.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, under the circumstances where there is one, if I get something from the school that's about a threat, am I able to? Okay.
Yeah.
So then, worst case scenario, then we can just forward it.
Okay, anybody else?
I've got a,
One second.
just one question. You were talking about the transfer students earlier.
I'm sorry, I didn't...
You were talking about, transfer students earlier. Is that limited, my understanding is that it's limited to, for example, like students whose parents work within the, Bay Harbor, Bal Harbor, Surfside, so the parents drop them off? Is that what the transfer students are? Or
No,
am I
sir.
misunderstanding that?
There could be a whole lot of different transfers. There could be hardship transfers. It could be that...
What would be a hardship transfer?
A hardship transfer would consist of parents working either in the town or right outside of town,
Okay.
making it easier for them to come in and out. They can have a relative living in the town and saying that that relative is going to pick up the child for them on a daily basis for supervision. So it could be an array of different things on the request for the transfers. You'd be surprised, sir.
And how many transfers do you know approximately that we have right now?
I don't have that number off of the top of my head, sir, but I can tell you that they're minimum in
44.
nature. 44? I'm not sure. I
Down-
couldn't
down from last year.
couldn't give you an exact
Thank you, I
number.
appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, I got a few if everybody else is...
Okay.
Okay. I spoke with Dr. Karp as well, and, he told me that you'd have a couple answers for me this evening, because it really comes down to two things. First of all, I think you answered one of them, which is not in a manner in which I'm actually quite happy. One of my questions dealt with the idea that, we are obviously at a certain percentage over capacity, and the intention of building the additional classrooms was not so that the numbers look prettier. It was to try and alleviate a little bit of the overcrowded nature, but not to simply say, guess what, it's gotten better because now we're at a lower percentage because you've added doors, or added chairs. What you said earlier tonight actually is the exact opposite of what I was hoping to hear. And that really worries me, especially as we continue to
How's that, sir? And I apologize.
Well, whatever the percentage is as today, and I know it fluctuates, whatever percentage over 100% that we are at as of today, it is based on the number of chairs, and it's based on everything and the number of students, and it's a simple mathematical equation. The problem, though, is when we talked about reducing the overcrowded percentage, we were talking about actually reducing the number of kids with our current capacity. Not for you just simply to add the additional classrooms that you're talking about in the chair and the desks that are being built now, and simply then say, guess what, everything's better now, because the percentage has gone down. But that's really what you said earlier tonight. You said that the number's going to come down as far as overcapacity simply because we are adding those desks.
If you heard that, those were not my intentions in what I said. What I said was basically that the numbers will go down, okay, because of the addition. However, if the addition's not built, we would still stay at 130, at 127, Scott? 127? We'd be at 127. I just wanted to share with you the numbers as how they would drop, not saying that this would be the solution to everything, because it isn't. We are still constantly trying to work those numbers to make them go down. Once we get to that 100 or 95 or that ideal number that we like, that's like hitting gold. But in this moment right now, even if we didn't do anything, okay, we are over capacity at this building, and that's the whole purpose of bringing in the building.
I understand, but what I just don't want to have is come back, let's say we have this conversation again next year. And let's say we're still at over 100%, which I'm going to be willing to bet we're still over 100% next year. But I don't want you coming back and stating to me, well, we did our best and we've dropped from 130 or 127 down to 105 and 110. But in reality, all you've done is add the additional desks, and there's been no real change in the administration as far as reducing the number of kids.
Well, I think that, and forgive me, I think that you're going to be able to get the numbers once we finish building. You're going to find the capacity that we had today compared to the capacity that we have tomorrow. Let's say that the building is finished off tomorrow, and you will see that that number is going to dwindle as it is right now with the efforts that we've placed. Okay, we have dwindled those numbers. Our kindergarten class is down by 27, or Mr.
It's 109 right now compared to 134 last year.
Okay, so those in itself are processes that we are doing at this point in time at the school to commit to the council that we are behind in what we're saying.
Okay, I just don't want to have that next year. The other thing is, and this is the other question that I asked.
Yes, sir.
Karp, make sure you have an answer. Other than kids that were declined entry on day 1, day 2, day 3, that were new students coming in, how many have you removed, not you personally, but how many have been removed from the school since the beginning of the school year that were already enrolled because you've now discovered that they were not appropriately in the school?
In this school year?
Yes.
I believe we may have a handful. How many?
We are currently investigating four families.
Last year, we had approximately 11 or 12, Mr. Saperstein?
A little higher. In
13.
So we're only at 4 right now that you're investigating. So 0 have been removed, is what you're telling me.
This year, sir, yes, but what I want you to keep in mind, Mr. Fuller, is that what we are doing is preventing from any additional.
The prevention's already done. But I'm saying, in other words, I want you to be fair to the kids, and I don't think it's being fair. I don't think there's a single person up here that is happy to remove a kid. We don't want the kids to have to go through this. It's not fair to the children. But I'm certain that it's better for a child to be removed from the first week or second week of school than further down the year. And I'm quite certain as well that as we talk about an October 1st start date for the mailings, by the time we get everything in and processed and everything else, it's going to be after January 1 of 2019. At that point, you're going to come back and then tell us, well, you know what, we're in the second half of the school year and it's not our procedure to remove a kid, so let's talk about it for next year. And then now another school year has gone by and we're still dealing with overcrowded issues. I have a problem with the fact that you're not going after and removing the children that shouldn't be there now for their own benefit.
Okay.
I have a question. I actually have 2 questions, but relative to the same thing. I don't understand how the percentage is going to go down when you add the new building, because it's the 18 classrooms. The whole purpose of adding the new buildings was to alleviate the double classrooms. So you're not actually technically adding any more classrooms. You're just...
It's a math trick. There's a set of capacities. That's my point. They're saying the capacity is higher, so therefore now we're doing
but
better.
It's the same. No, but it's the same number of. If you have 50 kids in a double, and it's 2 teachers, and you're gonna make it 2 classrooms, and it's 2 teachers or 25, you still have the ratio's the same. You haven't changed anything.
For the students, yes, it is. For the building, no, because we would have additional classes.
That's my point.
And then
it's a fix.
We're still at 1,200.
Yeah.
But
We're still
let me
talking about
ask you.
maximum capacity of
Yeah,
12 and change, I want to say, right?
Let me ask you another thing. I was told that when this school is built, that the additional building would be built, that you would be adding an additional VPK class. Is that still in the works?
I do not recall that, and I couldn't answer that question for you, sir. I don't have the answer to that
But
one.
right now, the way you're talking, we shouldn't be adding any new classes.
Well,
We're trying to alleviate.
But
what have.
we really do need another VPK class, because the number of kids that apply every year it's 3-4 times the number of kids that you have slots for. Anywhere between, I think this year, I didn't have a kid this year in VPK, but I know it was over 60, and I know in some years it's been over 100. People apply for 19, it's only 19 slots. So is that, who's the person that...
You don't get in.
I think
Yeah, I know.
we first concentrate on the 1,200, getting to 1,200, getting into the new building, doing the overflow, getting some of the children who, like Josh said, and then we can worry about a pre-K class. We can't add a pre-K class until we've taken care of cleaning house, so to say, in a roundabout way. I mean, we have nowhere to put them.
I just want, whatever agreement we come to with the revision, I want something done before the end of the year. I don't want them to start at October 1st and then send the letters and then say, well, guess what, it's the holidays, and now we're in January, because that's what's going to happen right now. And we all know it. It's going to be after January.
Sir, with all due respect, we don't operate that way. We will, if in the middle of the school year, we discover a youngster that does not belong to the school for the exception of, for the exception of an 8th grader, chances are that we are going to remove the child and we are going to send him or her to their home school. Just because there's a holiday, or because it's after January or anything like that, if you've lied on the application or you've lied going into the school, then it's not going to happen.
I think too it's an important, and thank you so much for coming out here. One, I just want to say I think that this dialogue is really appreciated, because we didn't start our dialogue with this sort of temperance, and so I really do appreciate that. But I do want to say something, and anyone who knows me, I'm a bleeding heart for children. But I will say this at the end of the day, if you lied on an application to get your kid into school, you accepted the risk that this may happen one day, and you are the parent of that child. And although I would never want any harm to come to a child, ultimately, you decided that risk was worth it. And if the child has to be redistricted in the middle of the year, then unfortunately that's something that has to happen.
I just think
I know,
that
I agree with you. It's not fair to the kids. The kids are the victims in all of this.
Exactly.
My biggest qualm in all of this is that they're telling their children to lie to administrators who are there to help them. But you know what? At the end of the day, we have to get the number down to where it needs to be. And there's a number of children. I mean, you guys are looking at 4 families now. I have a suspicion after the letters go out and as the school year goes on, you're going to have a lot more work to do in terms of families.
And I want to assure you that we're following every lead. There was a lead last year in reference to a yellow bus that was coming over the bridge, and I can't remember the specifics of it. Mr. Saperstein followed the bus, went over the bridge, found out that the person was parking over the bridge because land over the bridge is cheaper to park their buses than over here. We got all the students from the buses. We looked at every child that went into that bus. So every lead that we get, we're following up on it. It's not like we're saying, oh, okay, this isn't every single lead that we get.
But
That's false.
But-
Honestly, that's false, because all you have to do is station someone from administration on the corner of King Concourse and 96th Street in front of the Trip Hotel and see the dozens and dozens of cars that are coming from the causeway over the bridge, going eastbound on 96th Street and making a right to drop their kids off at school.
Right outside Keystone.
And
We watched
right,
the
and
children.
Ron, who lives on Keystone Point there, has witnessed groups of kids that gather and carpool from Keystone Point to Bay Harbor Island. So you guys haven't been doing as much as you can.
Sir, with all due respect, I said every information that they provide us with, we try to investigate it as much as possible.
Right, but you guys-
As posting someone at a corner,
A
no, we
representation was
have
made-
not done that,
A
sir.
representation was made that you guys are going to be proactive in this as well. We said we're going to give, you guys have to.
I hear what you're saying, Isaac, but I mean, I also don't necessarily expect school board officials to be, out in various points on Kane Concourse, taking pictures of cars. I mean, frankly, as a cooperative effort, and I don't want to impose on our police department, but, we have cameras also. We can look at the cameras where we have plate readers where we can look at the plate readers and look at the cars coming in the morning, and follow up on that. I mean, I don't necessarily, I don't know that I expect school board officials to be standing on the street, to be perfectly honest. But if we have a plate reader, look at, the same cars coming in the morning.
I think, Ron, we have a way of assisting the school board in finding people, and I think that once we get this agreement in place, that then we can, because they'll have the Nexus, whatever that thing.
Lexus.
And that will help them tremendously once they, get these plate readers. We can give you the addresses, the plates, and then you'll be able to go from there. So we're going to have to, the town are going to have to assist them in helping them find a solution. I mean, it's a partnership that I think that we both need to work on. However, we also have to keep in mind that we're dealing with children. So let's say we find them in February and they're about to take their SATs.
Right, I don't want to take
I don't believe, but this is the thing. If we find out that they don't belong there, and even if they were to finish the year, that still allows them to say to them, you know what? I'm really sorry, but you need to withdraw from the school and go somewhere else. I don't think come SAT time that the school, and I could be wrong, but I don't think let's be realistic, so we're all on the same page, come February, March, there's no way you're going to remove somebody who's about to take an SATs. There's just, it's not going to happen, so we might as well be honest
That's exactly
and
what I'm
open.
saying.
But the thing is, from here to February, we have a window of opportunity to work together with the police and with the readers that we have, because you can't hide from those readers.
But the readers don't help.
But they do help.
No, they won't, because the bus can very, first of all...
We're not talking about the bus.
You're talking
We're talking about the car, not so much the bus.
But you can't, there's some people who work on the other side that you're never going to, the amount of time to try to see where everything's going is impossible. It's just,
Okay, well, I think,
take a look at the buses that are parked in front of the school. I mean, there's a reason there's how many different bus companies right there?
Okay. Anything else?
I just want to add again the VPK class, because that's something that over the last few years, I've mentioned several times to the administration, including the previous principal. That was a top thing that parents want, and it'd be a shame if we don't keep that in mind before the new building opens up. To build an entirely new building and alleviate the double classrooms and not focus on having a second VPK class. If you look at the beach feeder pattern and all the other elementary schools, they all have additional VPK classes because there's a direct need for it. So I'd like to see that. Hopefully, maybe we can put that in the agreement, so we can codify it so we have an understanding where we stand. So, all right, but thank you so much, Roseanne.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you for your time.
There are some that legitimately come through those processes. So that's okay.
Okay, let's move on. All right, request for withdrawals,
Yeah.
deferments, and future agenda items.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we had the item for the symphony wasn't on this agenda. It's definitely going to be on the next agenda. So I just want to let you know, because we're running out of time, that's going to be for December. So I know staff already has the agreement and all the paperwork, so I just want to let you know. No. The symphony's in December, but it's going to be on the next agenda.
We gotta hope the park's ready.
Yeah, Ron, what's up
Ron,
with
what's the story with the park?
We're just signing the West just got the notice to proceed. We're going to have a pre-construction meeting, and they're going to start, they anticipate the whole thing will take about 6 weeks.
Symphony.
Okay, we're getting
When do
close.
we anticipate starting?
The night before New Year's Eve.
In the next, I don't know, the next 2 or 3 weeks.
So with construction, 6 weeks, we're talking 12 weeks, plus, we
It's
gotta
gonna be tight.
Free.
Okay, it's gonna be real tight. I'm also gonna pull 7A, B, and D from consent.
Hold on.
7A, B, and D.
A, B, and D. Well, yeah, I was going to say, if you had issues, why don't we just, defer those and then bring it back?
We can put, let's hit some of these things. I want to talk about just the fact that we're having some issues with minutes.
Oh, okay.
Pull.
Yeah, sure. All right, I was going to pull 8.
Anything else?
Future item. I'd like to bring the part of the code about air conditioners, like older ones, section 2312, regarding, the older wall units that are in some of the buildings, and some possible enhancements and possibly way to modify the code to, make some new technology fit in, be usable. Like to put splits where wall units could be.
Anyone else? Okay. Ron, town manager's report.
Okay. I'm going to start out with a really good story. I was going to say the New York City Police Department, the Bay Harbor Islands Police Department.
That is a good story.
Everybody's aware that we had a burglary on the West Island over Labor Day, and through some good efforts from the police department, they were able to get some security footage. After all leads were exhausted that they could identify them, they went public, and not that generated exactly a lot of tips, but it really was Detective Castellanos working very diligently to identify the car that they had a picture of. There was some side body damage. The detective went through, he say, about 1,000 registered not Camrys, Altimas, and found the car, had paper plates, and they were able to track the car back to where the car was bought or being rented from. At that point, they followed the car up to New York, where Sean authorized Detective Castellanos and Lindsay and Captain Noel to go up to New York. They met with NYPD, ICE, and other law enforcement guys and girls, and they went out to the airport and they grabbed one of the main suspects trying to make it into Canada from LaGuardia Airport. From there, they staked out before they went any further, they staked out the hotel where they were staying, and they grabbed the second suspect there through a short foot chase. There's more good news. Property was recovered, confessions were gotten, and I'm not allowed to say how they actually got to where they were going, but it really was pretty
perseverance, and I'd like to say, Sean, if you'd come up and really, it's a lot of things. Sometimes a small police department doesn't get the credit for really tracking down a suspect, and most police departments, I doubt, would have made the effort to go up to New York. But it really wasn't hesitation. Sean called me and said, we gotta go, and that was it. And the only regret he had was he couldn't go himself. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ron, for the kind words. And no, I didn't want to go, because that's a career opportunity and a lifetime for these guys. So, again, it goes back to you guys. I say this every time I speak publicly. The level of cooperation, the investment that you've made in this police department, the empowerment, the support, not just as your employees, but in a lot of cases, the friendships, that spreads out in the community. I think Channel 10 asked me a little while ago. They said, this is really amazing that a city would go to that extreme to bring, these suspects back and try to recover property. And I replied by saying two things. I said, well, first thing she said, my purse was stolen in Miami, and I never even got a call from a detective. And I said, well, that's what makes our community unique. But beyond going there for the job part, we hear from the residents all the time. You're doing a great job. We see you out here. Once in a while we'll get complaints, we don't see you enough. But our commitment to this community is, and our message to the bad guys is, if you come here, we will track you down and catch you. And, I said on the news tonight, we're batting 1,000. I'm not sure we're batting 1,000, but we're batting pretty close to it. And it goes back to the investment. I mean, the technology that our new detectives have, Castellanos, even Noel, the schools that we're sending them to, they're fighting police work a lot differently. It's not about driving by a house and seeing the burglar come out with a Santa Claus bag anymore. It's cyber crimes. It's tracking your victims. So we have to be smarter. We have to be on the front line of social media. We have to be on the front line of intel, and we've gotten there because of you guys. So as much as you're patting me on the back, this really starts with the manager right here, JC. JC was very instrumental in making sure our travel went through, making sure any resources we needed got made over the weekend. So these people are working at home 24/7. My detective's working around the clock. And that's pretty much it. The third suspect, I'm quite confident we'll have him in custody in the very near days to come. So again, thank you for the kind words.
Extremely well done.
Before you go. Two things, Chief. Make 2 copies of that report. Okay, send one to the chiefs so they have, so they can be nominated for, for the Officer of the Month or Officer of the Year for this. And the second copy, send it to Bell Harbor. Because, see, our guys can travel out of town and catch perps.
I have something to say too, Chief. First of all, this does not at all surprise me, and I've lived here for 20 years, and when I first moved here, I came in a marked car. I got to know a lot of the guys, and even before that, I kind of knew the culture here. And in the last 5 years that you've been here, you have elevated the level of professionalism. Amen. And the entire culture has changed, and you have empowered these guys, because there was a time when they didn't feel, like they could actually go out and do these things. The culture here was, to suppress the reporting, and that was going to make us look even better. So even if, that means that we're going to have these crimes reported and that we might not be number 2, we might be number 4 lowest, that's fine. But I've told you before that I feel extremely comfortable living here as a citizen, and it doesn't at all surprise me. But I would request that we take this momentum and we start really doing outreach and engagement of the community in the form of crime prevention workshops and those pizza and those coffee meetings. Let's really spread this momentum and get the Citizens Crime Watch really working so that we have more eyes and ears out there.
No, and I agree. Not to get into the investigation, because it's still a very active investigation. These are international thieves. This is the second time an international group of thieves has come into this town on my watch and picked your homes because they feel like this is an affluent community. And a lot of the opportunity that I've seen has come because, the level of safety is so high. They feel so safe.
Right.
So when people feel safe, vulnerability becomes increased. But what I can say is, to that point with the Crime Watch, is I think it is important, because twice now, in the last 3 years, now mind you, I think we've had 4 residential burglaries in the almost 6 years I've been here on the West Island. But all of them, to this point, or 3/4 of them at least that I know of, have been from international thieves now. That said, we need to get the message out. You are in an affluent community. They basically Google mapped the area, and they said, we want to hit high-end homes, and they picked Bay Harbor that way. There was no nexus to anything else at this point that we can see.
I think we should put something in the newsletter that allows, the residents to know, like, some tips and some ideas of what they should do. I mean, the holidays are coming, and people come in and out.
And we do that already, but we'll
Right,
continue to do it.
but I think that we should write something in the newsletter.
I'm sorry, I'd also like to see something more positive in the newsletter, a summary of
Right,
what
100%.
what happened, because when there are the rare times that there are these incidents, they sort of get, I don't want to say blown out of proportion. I mean, for somebody who was robbed, I mean, it's a very, it's
Stressful.
It's very stressful and very important, and it's terrible. But, the word makes its way around the community.
100%.
And you hear that something occurred, but they don't all hear the good
Bridget.
news and the great work that your department does. So I think it's important that the residents know, as you said, that, these are crimes of opportunity, international thieves who target our community, but,
We're
that
able to
we've done
catch
some
them.
great work. You've done some great work in apprehending these people, and you can talk about, in general terms, about the great resources that our community has.
Right. If you could put something together and give
Yeah,
Bridget.
we will, and to that point, council member, it's a really good point, because it's always been my impression that we never bury our heads in the sand when we have a problem. If we had a gang problem, I would want the community to know right away about it. We're part of the community. It's not the police and the community. It's one working together. Sometimes when we get the information out, if I'm quick to go to the news, in this case we were quick to go to the news because we were trying to recover property. We knew it was Labor Day. We knew 2 days into this, store probably wouldn't be open. There was a likelihood if we could identify him quickly, we would get the victim's property back, which to me is the most important thing. In this case, the victim's wife's wedding ring was stolen. She's pregnant, so she had to take it off. So it was a terrible, terrible act. But when we do put it on the news, we hear that all the time. The sky's falling. Well, no, the sky's not falling. We're advertising this because we want to get it out, we want to solve it, even if it doesn't make us look necessarily great. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If, Mayor, just, I don't know if one of the things that was mentioned was they're probably going to close out a few cases in Broward County. And as Sean said, when he first walked in the door, I thought we had a few crimes, and then we had the international crime, that's those guys that came into town and were hitting high-end burglaries. And that was like almost an impossible thing to really get a handle on. I have to say, Sean did an amazing job of not only getting behind it, but getting all the other departments around that were less than enthusiastic, I would say, to get involved with Bay Harbor Islands in a small community. But in the end, it was really Bay Harbor Islands and his perseverance that really closed out that case. I mean, he's tracking them down in Doral, running around all over the place. But really, good job.
Okay, yes, thank you.
Once again.
Okay, now for boring stuff, seawall assessment. Just wanted to let you know that it will be coming out. This was a level 1 inspection, which is a little more detailed than the last one that they had done several years ago. We'll be following the same protocol where we'll be getting in touch with every property owner, starting with the worst first, and they'll be told, basically what inspection was done, what what you should be looking to do. If there's the worst is if you have really serious visible structural damage or something you should be concerned of. In this report that was more thorough, it involved docks, inspecting docks. So there are a few that are going to be recommended to, kind of red tag, either take them down or, come get it, rebuild them because they're in that bad a shape. And this one also went as far as going underwater and really going down to this bay bottom and seeing, everything. So it's a more comprehensive report. So that'll be coming, in the very near future. Councilman Yaffe asked me to make a comment. If you haven't noticed, there's on Kane Concourse, there's a few, looks like construction that started but stopped. We're installing the bicycle racks. But after that, there's a new inspector in town. I hate to say it, I think he lives in town, actually. And he's highly active, and it's not just with us, it's with Bal Harbor. They're making us pull permits for everything. And I'm not against pulling a permit, but it's, the level of the permitting, it's crazy. I mean, a Brightview, for them to plant a new plant, they're making them pull permits just to cut the grass, which they get more easily, but anything structural, we're waiting a turnaround. I know you identified East Bay Harbor Drive by the Grand Beach. You know, there's a drainage basin that needs to be adjusted. The guy who put in the original crosswalk signal drove it right through our outfall, and we're still waiting to get them to turn around on that permit. So it's not for a lack of effort, it's just, this guy's, wants every I dotted and every T crossed, not that we're not doing it, but it's kind of ridiculous. But we will prevail.
Is that FDOT that's doing it?
Yes.
I imagine that.
Yeah, shocking.
Okay, Town Clerk, your report on town elections.
I just wanted to give you an update. It came to my attention during the last election that actually there wasn't enough signage at the school precinct, which is number 8, and that it would be a better idea to use the community center. I spoke to the director. She thought it was great because that would bring more people in and they would know about the community center. We have 1,300 registered voters in precinct 8. I spoke to the elections department. I've made some inquiries. They didn't feel that they could do that for this election. They did not want to create some voter confusion, but they will be coming out after the election with me, and they will be visiting the site. They have to look for ADA access, parking, the size of the room, certain things, but they will come out, evaluate it, and then put it in place for any future election.
Perfect, thank you.
Let me just say, Marlene, hopefully they do transfer it over there for the future elections, but can you also mention them, I think at least for the first election after that, they should at least post somebody at the school to redirect people.
Well, they have said that they will be posting better signage for the November 6th election at the school so that people know where to go. So they will be making an effort.
No, but I'm saying for the future election, in other words, just talk to them that,
So they know
well, they send out notices to everyone.
Reader, you mean?
When they change the polling place.
People don't always read them.
Yeah, so, we always get the calls, where do we go to vote anyway, at town hall, and then we have to tell them where to go.
So the next election will be at the school?
Yes,
correct?
November 6th will be at the school.
Can we maybe reach out to the school? Can we just reach out to the school and make sure that, I know that, and kudos to Kathleen Kennedy because she really brought up a lot of this stuff. Can we just make sure the school has someone that prevents the voters from going into the school after they're done? Because one of the comments that was made was that people were just walking into the school after using the library to vote.
But that's why we want to move it for...
Well, no, but I know, but I'm saying if we can't move it
For
for the next
November.
one, can we talk?
November 6th, is there school on November 6th? I don't even...
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
Oh, there is.
Yes,
So-
I'll bring it up to the
If you
principal's
could bring
attention.
it up to him, I
Yes.
know he's not here anymore,
Yes.
but that would be great.
Okay. Council reports. I guess we'll start
Start with Leonard.
Leonard Jordan.
Well, make it very brief. Let's just say it's with the league, we've been very busy. We have our best practices conference next month. I've been a little busy. I've had quite a few meetings, probably a few too many to name, but so far so good, and the league is doing great. Other than that, I want to thank Ron for help on a few issues, but everything's going real good.
Good,
Hope
thank
everyone
you.
had a good summer.
Bob.
Good evening. So I went to the most recent Miami-Dade County League of Cities meeting, I guess earlier this month. And then on Friday, I went up to Orlando for the Florida League of Cities Policy Committee meeting, Finance, Taxation, and Personnel Policy. It's a pretty lengthy discussion trying to narrow the issues. There are 5 policy committees, and they each narrow issues and come up with a primary issue. We're looking at sales tax on e-commerce, communication services tax, sales tax on commercial leases, property tax issues, and local business tax receipt, or occupational license, what they used to call it, reform. So those are issues of municipal, taxation or tax revenue that all cities and towns need to top rate. So we're going to look at those issues, and I can tell you more about it at the next meeting. I did want to mention one thing that I found that was interesting, which was on our agenda. The vice mayor of Bel Air Bluffs, who's been a council member for 7 years.
The huge metropolis of
Right.
Bel Air Bluffs.
Who's been a council member for 7 years, decided to go back to work after her kids got older, and she got a job at PNC Bank, and she notified the bank that she was an elected official. And after she had worked there a number of months, she got an ultimatum from the bank telling her she needed to choose between continuing to work at the bank or continuing to be an elected official. Ultimately, they fired her when she refused to resign her position as an elected official. And that was one of the issues that we looked at in terms of personnel policy. But it's just interesting that 17 states in this country actually have laws that prohibit employers from discriminating against elected officials. Florida doesn't have one. And I just thought that was an interesting thing because I'd never heard of anybody, an elected official being required to make that choice of either, giving up their elected position or their job.
She chose my committee too.
Right, she chose the elected position.
Josh?
I'll be short as well. I can't remember because by the scheduling, if the Florida League annual conference, I think it was actually after our last council meeting by a couple days. So I, along with most people on the dais today as well, attended that. I was also in Orlando for the committee meetings. I'm on the Land Use and Growth Committee. There were several different topics we're talking about. One in particular that we're looking at are impact fees. There is a push in Tallahassee to eliminate the ability of essentially small towns to regulate any form of impact fees or regulation regarding size of businesses, signage, etc. So we're trying to make sure that we have our say in Tallahassee. And I also attended the 9/11 ceremony, which was a wonderful ceremony that we ran. And Ron and staff, I appreciate it.
Okay. I just want to remind everyone that in the next coming month, we have a lot going on in the town. We have the Halloween parade for the children. We have the car show that's going to be coming up soon. And there's still seats available for seats in recreation if you have your children that want to do anything. There's lots of senior events as well that are coming up. So please, take the opportunity and the time if you're interested to go ahead and take a look at what we have available and come out to participate with us.
I too attended the League of Cities Conference, annual conference in Hollywood, and I sat in on the Municipal Administration Committee, which is the one that I participated in before when it was called, I forget the last name, but anyway, we're going to be looking into, I wasn't able to go to your committee meetings on Friday, but I hope to be accepted back on the committee and to look into, again, the same vacation rental, sober home regulation, and most of the other priorities that we looked into for the last few years. So there's still a lot of momentum from that, and I think, it's ramping up a little bit, some of the complaints here and also in other places. So I look forward to that. I went to the 9/11 Remembrance Ceremony, which, as usual, was very well done. And it's really great the way that the kids participate. I think, it keeps the legacy of Never Forget going, and it was just another good job. Thank you, staff, everybody who worked hard on that. Then I want to bring to everyone's attention, I don't know if the school told you about it, but there's a new federal law starting on September 1st that it'll be free to enroll your children under 16 in a free credit freeze. So it's what's on the rise is identity theft on children, toddlers, newborns. As soon as they get the information, people go to social media and they post the date and, the name of their children, and they're bragging about it, and next thing you know. So starting on the 21st, nationwide, it's the Federal Trade Commission, so you go to consumer.ftc, like Federal Trade Commission.gov, and for free, you can start to protect your children as soon as they're born. So I think, and I hope the schools are promoting that, but, this is good for people whose kids are not even in school yet.
Isaac?
Yes, thank you. It was a busy month, last month. Thank you, Josh. Well, first of all, I want to say Shana Tova to everybody that celebrates the Jewish New Year. I went to actually a couple of meetings of the Children's Trust, mainly surrounding budget, and we passed the budget. And I'm proud to say that I sponsored, supported, and succeeded in having the Children's Trust go to the rollback rate as well, which was a big deal because they certainly didn't, they were a little bit resistant, but we were able to pull that off there. I also attended the Miami-Dade County League of Cities, which was a very productive meeting as well. And then in my activities as Vice President of the Florida League of Cities, there was a couple of events that I had to, that I was invited to attend, or I had to attend. And one event that I want to report on that I didn't attend. We had a special committee meeting on the Executive Director's continuity, which was a very select group that will determine who the next Executive Director of the Florida League of Cities will be. And that's a big deal considering that Mike Sittig, the current sitting Executive Director, has been there for over 20 years. That was very interesting. Next week, actually later this week, we have a Board of Directors meeting that's going to take place in Manalapan, Florida, in which there's a lot of important items that are going to be discussed there. During that meeting, I'll be chairing the Florida Municipal Loan Council, as well as Florida League of Cities Vice President. I will be part of the Florida Municipal Insurance Trust now. So, and it's, that was our insurance company when we had the bridge accident. So I hope they don't chase me out of the room. And I know there's a couple of other things, but I know I'm running out of time, so that's...
So I want to thank everybody and also wish them a happy and healthy new year. I also attended the 9/11, and I had the school bring to us the kids' work that they have done for remembering 9/11. So if you get an opportunity, please, take a look at the beautiful artwork that our kids in Bay Harbor have done. We are definitely having in October a packed we're having a car show. We're having Halloween. Do you know the dates by any chance?
There's a car show.
Oh, thank you.
It's on the newsletter.
I know, but I don't. So if you haven't, October 21st, I've been to a couple of them. They're a lot of fun. I have to tell you, they're a lot of fun. So if you have the opportunity, please come out. And also, we are having a parade for the kids and rides and other activities for Halloween.
Yes, it's going to be fun this year. A little different, but fun.
A little different, but fun. And where is it going to be located?
It starts at the school, right after 3:05. We march off at about 3:30, and we end up in front of Town Hall.
And the rides?
And the rides will be right here.
Okay, perfect.
Stephanie,
Okay.
before you, I just remembered what I wanted to say because I wanted to bring some good news for, there was a meeting that I was also invited to, which was in Orlando, and it was by the invitation of the incoming Speaker of the House, Jose Oliva. And he invited several representatives from the Florida League of Cities, and this is very important, and it speaks to the issues that were brought up by Bob Yaffe and Josh Fuller about home rule. And it was a very, very productive meeting. Unfortunately, I did not attend it, but it was attended by the mayors of several large cities and the officers of the Florida League of Cities. And the report was that he was, first of all, just for him to call the meeting and invite us to the table, was a big step in the right direction. And he said that he supports, cities in our efforts to stop, this unabashed attack on home rule. And, he is, he made himself available and says he will sit down, and make sure that our voice is heard whenever, his colleagues come up with these crazy preemptive.
That's. I'd love to see.
It was a home run. It was a home run.
Our executive director was there. Richard Cooper went to that.
Richard Cooper was there, and there are a lot of.
One last thing, completely. I think, well, that's fantastic. I know she wants to be moving on. Just one last thing, real quick, just for any parents out there that have kids. Because I've had several mothers actually ask me and make comments to me. I'm just reminding everybody as the school year started, please do not park your cars at the Bank of America built-in lot. I have had many parents already ask me about that, and they think it's a great way to stop for a few minutes. You will end up having a problem, so please don't park there.
Where that says reserved?
Yes,
on the parking space.
exactly.
If it says reserved on the parking space, that means unless you live in that building, you cannot park there.
But they
Because
can
I've
park
gotten
in-
some questions about that
You can
too.
park in the garage for free.
Right.
You know, that's
Yes.
important to
Yes,
mention, that
absolutely.
we're not going to give you a ticket if you're dropping off or picking up your kid. So-
Okay, Kathleen Kennedy?
Mayor, well, Kathleen is coming up. Just to put out, we forgot to mention that on October 14th, the community center, we have an open house for people to come in and register for programs and learn about, what's available to them.
And your registration fee is waived during that event, correct?
Right. Let's make sure we put it in the newsletter.
It will be.
Again.
First of all, I'd like to wish all of you a Happy New Year. Hope you all had a good vacation. And thank you, Marlene, for getting involved with the elections, because I'm the one that raised holy hell with the elections department. I also raised holy hell with Marlene, even though it wasn't her fault. I couldn't find where to go and vote. And when I did get there, the lovely ladies there were very nice, and I could actually walk into Mr. Saperstein's office from there. And I said, what kind of security is this? So I called up the elections department. I told Marlene what was going on, and they didn't even know we had a community center. So we had to do a PR work with the elections, because, you guys come up for elections, and I didn't even know where to go. That was my problem, is I didn't know where to go and vote, because I moved. And I moved over to the number 8? Whatever. Anyway, I couldn't find, and then I had to pass through garbage cans and garbage this, and I'm like, are you serious? This is how we vote in this town? No way. So I called up. And I spoke to the supervisor, and I told her, and she was very, very nice. She said she was going to deal with Marlene, and she did. So when we changed Trump out of here, we will be dealing with the elections from the community center. Okay? Too bad it's not the midterms. Anyway, so moving on, the best commodity we have here is the Bay, and we have to open up our minds and our vision and do something. And I wanted to get that police boat that you're going to get rid of. I understand that it's no good, the motors are not working. So we've got paddle boating going on. We would like to get rowboats out there. We'd like to get we have hotels here now, very nice people coming and going. We have nothing to offer them. So let's charge them, the people that are tourists that are coming here, and make some money, because the Bay is so gorgeous that we should be doing something. And we in the Parks and Rec are trying to push the paddle boating now, because we can't have that. I was trying to get the kids to go on the old police boat to see how life is under the water, but the chief told me today that the motor's no good. But let's try, and I'm bringing that up for Parks and Rec. Also, Elizabeth, the Dreamers are part of, the parents had to lie for a better life. It wasn't the kid's fault. And when a parent lies, there's a reason for it. And to chase a kid out of school, it just makes my heart beat. I know what you're all doing up there, and I can see it, but, when you say a parent lies, it's probably because of hard times, it's probably because something happened, or whatever, but it's not the child's fault, and we shouldn't be chasing a child out of school. Okay? Now, we have Pizza by the Cops coming up September 26th. I'd like some of you to show up. And I'm raising holy hell with Church by the Sea. Just want everybody to know. I'm talking about holy hell. And you want to know why?
Why?
I've gone up there 4 times in person. No, 3 times, excuse me. And I've asked them for a nativity set, even a menorah. A new one, because, they're coming into our town. Ours is broken. And can I just continue this second? And they keep blowing me off like oh, we think, So you know what? Every time they come before this council, they're going to get it from us. Because you know what? That's the least they can do, is give us a nativity set up on that hill. And a menorah. Okay, that's the least they can donate to us as a welcome to our community. Am I right or wrong? So I've been letting them have it. They're blowing me off. I told everybody, and if anybody has any influence with them, you tell them they got a problem, because
You're the
they're
first
not
person I've
welcome in
asked
this
to
town as
transfer
far as, they're not welcome in this town as far as I'm concerned, as of now. Thank you.
Amber, can I just address her concern?
Sure.
You have a nativity?
I completely understand where you're coming from, Kathleen. I never want harm to come to a child, and I think it's difficult to take the position that I have taken and other people have taken and have people think anything other than what you've just said. I don't have a problem with anyone who, if they work in that school or they have a hardship, I agree with you. That child deserves the best education that they can have. But I'm going to tell you right now, these are not people that have hardships. They live in million-dollar homes on the other side of that bridge and choose to send their child to get an education here rather than paying for private school tuition. That I have a problem with. And I will tell you, I don't ever want harm to come to a child, and I think that this is an ugly topic to have to even talk about, but it is the reality of our school being at 137% or whatever we are for this year. We do have to talk about these things.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mrs. Newhut.
While she's coming up, I want to ask Ron, do we have a nativity scene? I thought,
No, we don't. The way it's written, the ordinance is written is that the nativity scene, or it's
Broken.
but who put it up previously?
Miss Kennedy did.
Oh, she put, okay.
Yeah.
But,
It's broken.
but who puts up the menorah, though?
The menorah is also, just like she,
That's it, say that.
just like she, I'm sorry, like,
Just
it's
like-
done by, it's
Sponsored
sponsored.
by
Who sponsors the menorah?
The shul sponsors that.
Oh, okay.
They come and fill it out.
We do it together.
Okay.
Francis Newhat, 1060 Kane Concourse. That was fabulous news about the school. It's good news. It's the best news I've heard in so long. And I will bring the news to others. Okay, about the budget, because I missed it. Unlike other municipalities, is our public broadcasting channel 88 being limited so that elderly and others will no longer have access? Okay, with the cost of $135,000 for the tot lot surface replacement, is this expensive AstroTurf being put down once more, when our town planner had stated this particular product can no longer be used for counting toward any required open space? Will the town be purchasing another required ballpark level of service for a population of 6,000 and another parking garage? According to the budget hearing, it appears the parking trust has been eliminated, therefore forcing the business district, unlike Miami Beach, to use with no limitation plus or minus 4 levels of dangerous parking lifts with new development in the business district. Since we will be losing significant tax revenue to tax-exempt, cash-rich institutions, perhaps they can provide levels of service that will benefit our entire community. And the last is, since the government TDR program and monies from extending the time frame of acquiring building permits appears to not be benefiting town residents, perhaps we should go back to the original intent of selling only private TDRs and going back again to the 6 months to pull a building permit. We should limit the limitations on that. We keep extending them to these developers. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I just point out that Wednesday, the 26th, we have a budget meeting, so I don't think you'll see any of us there, if that's an evening meeting, Mrs. Kennedy. Your pizza meeting, as you said, to come Wednesday, the 20th. We have a budget meeting that night.
Yeah, what is it, this is the second budget?
Yeah, budget
meeting?
meeting.
Should be exactly.
5 minutes.
You know, 5 minutes or less.
So save us a slice, we'll be over.
Yeah. Free pizza.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're even now.
Number, let's go.
4, come on.
4. Report from Parks and Recreation Committee.
You want me to take care of it? At the last meeting,
Take care of it, Jason.
at the last committee meeting, Paul Basil, and he was at the meeting, he presented to the council, not to the council, the committee, an idea about hosting a paddleboard type of event, kind of like a Paddletopia that I think Surfside tried to do, and they were rained out. And the committee approved it, they're recommending it to you guys. And I think the total cost based on the TKS is one of the companies that does it. Based on the proposal that they submitted, I think it was about $1,500 to do it, and it'd be like a nice weekend type of event.
Where do you launch from?
Well, that's the other thing. We're trying to identify a location for it. An ideal location would be maybe to speak with One Cane Concourse, the owners. They have a dock back there that it'd be easy to get onto the paddleboards, and it's also very wide waterway.
How about 9955? They have a dock and it's all grass, and I think, do you represent?
The grass is the issue. The grass is the issue. And there, if we were to get the one location, there's parking and stuff available, so.
I'm glad Lowenstein left, it would have been at his house.
I look this way and, boom.
So with your okay, and with your okay, I would like
I think that's
to
great. I think
possibly
that's
pursue something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Number 5, consideration and approval request for appointing to the Parks and Rec.
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Just for the record, this is appointing the only applicant, April Griffin, who is to
Yeah.
fill the remaining of the term for Leo, who resigned.
Right.
So, number 6.
Free back massages for everybody.
Consideration and approval. Consideration and approval of a request for appointments to the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee.
Well, we finally got 7 applicants
Yay.
for this committee. We're recommending that you appoint them for 1 year because next year is all the committee reappointments. And they'll have to meet and figure out what their mission statement is going to be and come back and bring it to you for approval.
Oh, that's all.
So I'll move it.
Second.
You want to read the names?
Yes, of course, I can read the name. It's Sylvia Galvin Lundstrom, Jacob Gibner, Greg Lehman, Vincent Martino, Christopher Mills, Sabina Sarah Osman, and Luis Padilla.
Awesome. Good.
Perfect.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Did we vote on them?
We have to vote. Forward? Or no, it's
No.
discretion, you're right. So we're
Yeah,
done.
okay. Consent agenda.
I'll move it.
Yeah, I want to vote. There was a motion and a second. Did they-
All those in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Item 8, or,
No, it's consent, which is
Consent, right.
oh, okay.
7, C, E, F, 9, and 10.
Right.
You went, okay.
We pulled.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay. All those
Now we need
in...
poll
Oh,
vote.
I need a full vote on that one, I
Okay.
believe. Yes. Councilmember Yaffe?
I pulled
4.
A, B, and E.
Councilmember Chicoche?
4.
Councilmember Salver?
I'm sorry, I pulled A, B.
Councilmember Reed?
4.
Councilmember Leonard?
4.
Vice Mayor Fuller?
4.
Mayor Brewer?
4.
Unanimous.
Okay, now we pulled...
Mayor, I just want to note, or Ron could note, that one of the items that we just approved is an agreement which will provide the town with $1,201,770 to complete the Shepherdport Causeway Corridor Enhancements Project. And I thank the manager and the assistant manager for all of the work in obtaining that grant.
Bob, can I go one step further?
Yes.
There's only one way you get to $1.2 million. Somebody has to become lab certified. Now, JC was that before, but as you go on in time, that process becomes hellish. And JC very happily volunteered to go through that.
Thank you.
With me pointing a gun at him.
Subjecting yourself to that.
But it was really, no.
Right.
I mean, it was really, jumping through hoops would be, and fire hoops would be easier than doing that. And the extra almost $46,000 is because of his efforts, so.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so we pulled
We're on 7
A, B,
and D.
D.
And D.
Yeah, I pulled them because I need to make a few corrections here because we're having sometimes there's some inconsistencies here on the minutes. First of all, on 7A, actually, I'm sure we have comments too as well. On 7A, it kind of just brushes over. It talks about, just simply said that the school board, this goes back to the original school board conversation in front of us, and it kind of just brushes over the topic. I want to place it on the minutes that I had said that we should place the school board on notice of breach or default of the agreement. So I'd like to have that included on the minutes. Also, on 7B, it said there's actually attendance wrong. It says that I was not in attendance. I was in attendance. I think, that there's an error as to who was there, so I'd like that corrected and double-checked.
You have the license plate reader?
I actually, to be 100% positive, I checked the video and I was there as well, so I've got video of it. And then D, my notes on here as well. I'm looking back at what it stated about me. It's kind of interesting. It starts off, it simply says that I reported visiting the state capitol. And then as we go on to everything else, it talks about days for everybody else. I wasn't there as a tourist. So I want to make sure the record reflects the fact that I was there for both days and for legislative action days on behalf of the town.
How was it?
He was there for the paella.
Yeah, exactly. On golf. Just kidding. Go ahead.
Okay, we have comments.
Okay, Francis Newhut.
We're taking comments.
There was number 8.
Francis Newhut, 1060 Kane Concourse. In reference to these minutes, the ones that you had picked out, I feel that we have a lack of transparency here with these minutes. It's questionable the time frame of when the town council minutes are being approved, plus or minus a year later. And I'll just go over these minutes. The first one is October 16, 2017. And it included agenda number 3 with Miami-Dade County School Board, with the 16 new classrooms, $9 million. This was never brought for your approval. January 8th, 2018 is really January 8th, 2017. That's incorrect, what she's got there. On that was the increased building height from 65 to 75 feet in the town's business district. These things are from last year.
Yeah.
Okay, February 12th, 2018. There was a comment about kids utilizing the open field at the RK-based public school. That could have been approved or not, I don't know. There was a traffic study. We put in some money for that on item 14. This was not approved yet, and that was from February 12th, 2018. Then you have March 12th, 2018, which includes number 8, which was, number 13, which is the mechanical parking lifts regulations. That wasn't approved. April 16th, that's 2018. These minutes were never even brought to council for approval. They're still out there. And on that, you have the item number 9 with the floating vessels, item 8, required outdoor lighting, item 8, the parking lifts, item 10, the front yard open space in single-family homes, item 11, another 6-month extension to file a building permit at that commercial gateway. The commercial gateway is 9551 East Bay Harbor Drive. Item 13, there was discussion and temporary use of the Bell Harbor's basketball court. These things haven't been approved. Item number 15, prohibit town vendors and developers from campaign contributions. I think that it's very important that these minutes get approved at a decent time frame, because these are questions, and if you don't have the minutes approved and someone wants to challenge it in any way, you can't, because the minutes have not been approved. So it's not fair to your audience here, and it's not fair to anyone that this is going on. So I would appreciate, like other municipalities, that these minutes are approved at a decent time. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Actually, I want to thank Mrs. Newhoff for bringing that up to everyone's attention. We are behind on minutes. We have been trying, and it's been an ongoing discussion, to do action minutes. First, I want to say there's no statutory requirement for approval of minutes. Minutes are the clerk's interpretation of what happened, and the only things that are required to be is the votes in the minutes. Anything else is put in there at the request of council members. We are and have been understaffed for 5-6 years. I request every year an additional person, but, we always have to make accommodation for other things that are more important. So I've tried, and this is the second time some of these are on the agenda, by the way. We also post draft minutes on the website.
Right.
So even if they haven't been to the council,
It's available.
they're posted on the website. So with all that said, we are trying to keep comments the least possible. We don't need to say everything that the council members have said. The actual only, it's hard to say to a politician, the only important thing is the decision. But that's the only important thing, is what happened, whether it passed, whether it didn't pass. I mean, that's the facts, only the facts. So with all that said, I just tell you that to keep in mind. And yes, we are behind on minutes, but we're trying to catch up and do our best to get there.
Okay, number 11.
8.
No, 8.
8.
Oh, wait, come on.
Yeah.
Consideration and approval of a resolution continuing the extending the temporary moratorium on medical marijuana treatment centers and medical dispensing facilities in the town.
Yeah, I brought this up because it's for another 180 days, so it's been a half a year, and I don't think that we should be kicking the bucket for another half a year. I think the council needs to make a decision whether or not we're going to allow it or not allow it. I'd be in favor for another, 60, 90 days. Maybe people need to get some more information, but to be honest, it's not acceptable from my standpoint to say, hey, we're going to push it down the road for a year. It's not fair. We need to make a decision whether or not we're going to allow it or not allow it and call it a day. But waiting for next session is not going to make our lives any different. So I'm in favor of changing it and allowing another moratorium for 90 days and say we need to actually decide what we want to do as a government.
So he wants, instead of 6 months, you want,
I'll give you 90 days and
so
then
does
we'll
anybody
make a
second
decision.
that?
I just want to say it's a little tough to put an ordinance in place in 90 days when there is no direction on which way we're going to go. In the meantime, I get phone calls all the time from attorneys that want to do a dispensary in town as to whether or not it's allowed in the town. So you kind of have to approve some kind of an extension and then give us direction so that we can draft the ordinance to get it in front of you. 90 days is kind of tough because you don't have a December meeting.
Right, exactly. I was going to say December meeting.
Yes,
so
you don't have to
essentially-
We'll make how about 120 days? But we need to figure out what we want to do. I mean,
But we have to first see if the rest of the council is inclined to 120 days or they want 6 months.
it's been a half a year.
But what is it, let me just ask you,
Yeah,
why
you
have we
to ask the rest of the council what they want.
had this continuing moratorium? I mean, why have we put this off? Were we waiting for something
No.
from some other governmental body to give us some
No, I
type of
think a lot of
direction,
stuff
or
was-
we're just being indecisive about it?
And I think a lot of it wasn't settled around the state, when we first started talking about it, but now it's time to make a decision.
Now, I had previously given the council a memorandum on this issue. There were some challenges and the like, but I think it's settled enough now that you could make a decision. If you're going to permit it here in the town, you would have to treat it like any other pharmacy.
Right.
And because you already have a pharmacy in the town, you would basically open up the business district to any dispensary that would want to come in.
Right.
You could not limit it to a specific block area.
Right.
It would be the entire business district. So it's up to you.
Well, within the exception of the schools, there is a provision, a
Yes.
500 feet provision for schools.
Right, but
Yeah.
yeah, other than that,
Yeah.
small radius.
Yeah, and-
You would be able to do it throughout the business district. So you have the right, if you want to prohibit it totally. That's what the legislature has given you the right to do, or you allow it. And if you allow it, it's going to be treated no different than any other pharmacy.
Okay, so while you have a moratorium, then, if assuming we go with the 120 days, why don't we just put something on the agenda, let's say for the November meeting, for the town council to make a decision as to whether they want it or don't want it, and then depending on the council's decision in November, and if required, an ordinance can be drafted.
October.
October, I was going to give them a little bit more time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I don't care, October or November, just put it on an agenda.
Bob,
So-
I'm-
November.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be a topic of one of the committees too, so we might see some movement. When does the legislative session start?
Not till March.
Okay, so you don't want to wait that long until something is settled, I mean, next
Well-
July?
It's as settled as I think it's going to be. I see the legislature would have to completely change things, which I'm not sure would do based upon,
Frank?
given the fact that, a lot of the municipalities have already made a decision on this.
Hey, Frank, could I ask a question? If the council said no, could they later change their mind and say yes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could.
Sure.
But if you
they could say
said,
yes, and then...
could they
come back
later
and
on say no? If they say yes, could they later?
I don't think so, because
Okay.
once you've opened it up and once you have
Okay.
dispensaries, I don't think you can take that right away.
Okay.
You have the ability to prohibit it from day one. I think once you allow it, you can't go back.
Right.
So let's put it on the agenda for November.
We still need the moratorium.
Still need the moratorium.
No, I'm not saying, I know you need the moratorium, I'm
Yeah.
just saying, let's get it on an agenda so that we can
Right.
make a decision.
Okay.
I mean, as Frank said, there's really no reason to keep putting this off, a council decision to put that
Right.
off. We need the moratorium because we don't have a decision at this
Why
point.
wait till November? Why can't we discuss it in October?
We have a lot,
We have a lot.
we will be, I don't think we'll get to it, to be honest with
Right.
you. We have a lot going on in October, so
Right.
there's no rush, I'm not, let's do it in November.
Right.
And then we can, then that gives them the opportunity also to do some research that you guys.
I think we should well publicize it, not just a one-liner in the back of the newsletter, but to make sure.
Okay, but that leaves us to this quick question tonight. So the only thing is, if we only did 120 days, and let's say in November, we decide to do something, we'd still be, we'd have to change it, but we'd have to we'd have to provide notice again that we're extending, or can we just do it to extend it at that point?
I think logistically, if you do the 6 month with the...
That's why I'm thinking 6 months is
caveat,
better.
Yes, we need it, with the caveat that we're going to
Work on
discuss
it.
it and possibly make a decision in
Right.
November. You've given all of us plenty of time. to get-
That's what I was thinking, because I'd rather not have a problem with notice come November. So let's do the 6 month, but we may end it earlier come November.
I mean, if we did 120 days,
but the
October,
problem-
November,
But we don't have
December,
a,
January.
but we don't have a December meeting, and you're going to have to have an ordinance. in
You need
2
two
weeks,
readings,
January,
you need two
February.
readings,
That's the
okay.
issue.
So, so what do we do?
So we're moving it, as the question is, do we continue it as we had before for another 180 days?
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we keep 180 days, but why don't we at least put it on the agenda for October, and listen, if we don't get to it, we don't get to it,
I've
but
requested November, unless anybody else objects to having November, let's just leave it at November and move on. I don't,
Yeah, I think November is,
I think that
I'm
works.
okay with November. November?
all right, I'll move that we continue 180 days, unless you made a motion for one.
no,
I'll move that we continue as written, the 180 days.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I just want to mention one brief thing, because staff didn't mention it, even though I asked them to. On number 9, the $1.2 million, there was a lot more that went into it than other than staff, and I think we should give credit where credit is due. The Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office was instrumental in helping to get that $1.2 million. We should thank the Congresswoman and her staff, specifically Lori Flink. I personally met with the Congresswoman and her staff on this issue, and they helped make sure that we get this money, because they were going to recapture the money. So I want to thank them for helping us with that. So.
Thank
Very
you.
good.
Okay.
Which number?
There's no...
We have no consent.
nothing. Just no paper.
That's already approved.
Well, number 9, no, number 9 was part of the
It's already
consent
done.
agenda. We're
It's
not-
already approved.
It's done.
Already done.
It was done.
9
Okay.
is long gone.
Now we're
All right,
on
11.
for...
Item 11, consideration and approval of the proposed ordinance on second reading, amending the town code regarding zoning and planning, regulations to address the minimum open space requirements on second-story building area requirements in the single-family district.
An ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, amending the town's code of ordinances related to zoning and planning regulations to address minimum open space requirements and second-story building area requirements in the RD Single Family District, amending Chapter 23.1 of the Zoning and Planning Code entitled Definitions, amending Chapter 23.11 of the Zoning and Planning Code entitled Land Development Regulations, providing requirements and standards, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date.
I'll move it.
A second.
Mr. Miller, you want to?
Yes, just briefly, this is the Phase 2, I guess we'll call it, of the Planning and Zoning Board recommended modifications to the zoning regulations for the single-family district. We have now instituted the Phase 1, which is some open space requirements in the front yard. This composite has some definitions, and the recommendation is to, for the first time, establish a minimum open space requirement in the single-family district. We have one in the multifamily. It's a scale based on one-story homes or two-story homes, and the second portion of this is for to address the modern big box houses, that there would be the second story would be restricted in area and can be modified on a case-by-case basis. So this was discussed last month, and it's recommended for approval.
Let me just ask you one thing real quick.
Yes.
As far as existing homes, application for that?
The ones that are in process, as we've talked to the town attorney's office, they would be considered in process already.
Right, they're grandfathered.
Grandfathered.
Because I didn't see the language specifically on there. I'm just saying, if we had, let's say, for example, well, my only issue is if there was somebody who had a home and it's damaged, we have a storm or something like that, now all of a sudden you're talking about a significant reconstruction where they may not be able to build what they had before or renovate the same walls or anything like that after the storm. So I'd have an issue with that, but this doesn't allow for any of the grandfathering to be able to rebuild an existing structure, correct?
Well, we have the standard 50% rule for grandfathering, you know, anyway. And that somebody always has the possibility, if they feel like that it's, you know, they can come in and ask for a relief of that too under our
Yeah,
code.
but we're talking about the footprint here, which is a little bit different than, you know, normally the 50% rule is a little bit different, but here you're talking about the actual footprint. So if somebody's home takes up a higher percentage and all of a sudden there's a problem, and if the, you know, storm comes in and they're going to be doing a significant amount of work and they're over the 50%, you know, now all of a sudden you're telling them they can't rebuild the home without coming back to the whole variance process. There's nothing in this ordinance that allows for a rebuilding on the actual base that previously existed, is there?
You're trying to do the acts of God.
Yeah.
The way we would handle it, I think, is if somebody comes in, we get most of the new construction is complete new construction.
Right, I have no problem with complete new construction.
Occasionally get a renovation, and we have to look at that and see how everybody is going to meet the setbacks, basically, that's on the ground. A 10-foot side setback of front 25 and the rear either 15 dry lot or 40. The only change would be in the open space area or the second story, if they want to add the second story and go straight up versus pinch in and do a little articulation.
No, I understand, but my worry again is the footprint, because we're talking something different here. If there is a footprint already for the home and they are not in compliance with the new code, but all of a sudden because of a hurricane or what have you, and they're slightly up there, just over 50%.
I'm sorry,
now
don't
that-
we have something in the code about the natural disasters and fires and things like
Right,
that, where
that's
they
what I
would be able to rebuild to the originally approved?
Well, that's what I was asking, to make
Plan.
sure, and you're saying that the 50%.
We have a
comes in.
section in the code about,
Okay,
that
as
deals
long as
with
it's
that.
So it's like grandfathered in.
But everything all the way through. Okay.
But for natural disaster, not for the desire to improve.
Right, well, that's fine, that's what I was
if
asking.
you had a
I mean,
fire
You say it's like a natural disaster, I mean,
Or fire or something
fire
that's...
or natural disaster.
Well, that's what I was asking, is usually it is, but then when you were saying it's just the 50% rule, then it wouldn't qualify under that, but you're saying it does qualify under there regardless of the 50% rule.
Right, we have the standard.
Okay, that's what I was just
clause on
confirming, that's what I was asking.
That's what I was
Okay,
trying to get
anybody
across.
else? No?
Yeah.
Francis Newhut? Ms. Newhut?
Francis Newhut, 1060 Kane Concourse. We had this discussion before, and this does relate both to the single-family homes and the residential on multifamily, according to some of these codes here. The thing that I need for Miller to explain to us, because the Planning and Zoning Board took the whole meeting just discussing it, of what exactly is open space. Because here, it says here in the definitions, there's a whole thing on open space, what it includes, what it doesn't include, and also artificial turf should not count toward any required open space. And in our parks, we are using this AstroTurf. And we are limited with our parks to begin with. Does that mean that we don't have the required level of service with our parks now by putting this AstroTurf? And that's what I would like him to answer.
I think that's related to the pervious pavers, correct?
It's broader than that.
Yeah.
But for a park, there's no criteria for this. This relates to single-family, multifamily only, not parks
But it's
and
for
civic
driveways.
land.
Right.
The other thing is even with all these changes, I wanted to bring to your attention that the house across the street from me and many of the other larger houses, okay, the planning and zoning might have approved them, but they're not the same as what is out there. And the code has not changed with certain things. And I think this needs to be addressed because I don't know how they're going to get their certificate of occupancy if they're not to code. Thank you.
Thank you.
Call the question. That's it.
Okay. Let's go.
Councilmember Leonard.
4.
Councilmember Reed. 4. Councilmember Salver. He's not here. Councilmember Chicoche. 4. Councilmember Yaffe.
4.
Vice Mayor Fuller.
4.
Mayor Bruder.
4.
Unanimous.
Item 12, approval of an ordinance on first reading amending Chapter 20 of the Town Code relating to utility billing and collections.
An ordinance of the Town of Bay Harbor, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Bay Harbor Islands, Florida, amending Chapter 20 of the town's adopted Code of Ordinances entitled Utilities, amending Section 20-7, 2011, and 2015.1 to provide for uniform billing payment, collection, and the filing of liens in connection with utilities, providing for severability, providing for clarification, providing for an effective date.
Mayor, this ordinance really addresses the town code that was really very well dated or original, and it broke utilities down into sewer, water, and stormwater. Stormwater was the latest to be added in the 1990s. There was a little confusion depending on where you were in the code. It told you kind of to do a little bit different the way to collect on utilities. This kind of put it all together and made it more succinct and easy to follow, and combined it and made sure that it was just consistent. Being that our water bill contains sewer and your stormwater, it's not like you get 3 separate bills and you decide which one are you going to pay this month. Councilmember Reed asked that we look at it and make it a little stronger. We looked at the other towns, and there was a research done by the finance director, and to be consistent, the idea of a late fee, which we really never had in the town, we put it in with the caveat that if a 3% late fee would be added if you went 30 days past your due date, which really gives the person sufficient time. That's the 30 days up to when you're supposed to pay, and if you go another 30 days, you're going to get penalized to 3%. Everything else I thought was pretty good, consistent on what we do. And I know Kelly had one more thing she wanted to add, but when we do, I'll say what we normally do. If we're coming to the point where we're going to shut your water off after we mail to either on a single-family home to the single-family property owner, or on a multifamily, it would be to the property owner or whoever is in charge of the building. They would get the mailing, but we post. Literally, we can we paper everybody's door. We have had people in the past that would go down and take them down. Code usually does the posting, so they would follow up, make sure if that happened, which happened once, we reposted. And I'll leave it, that's where we do. Usually that creates enough stir that we have immediate response from the managing agents or whoever's in charge of the building. So we'll leave it up to them.
Yeah, what I was referring to was, I felt like it was important, whenever you had a property, whether it was single-family or multifamily, that was not homesteaded, that, you know, at a certain point, when it was past due, that there'd be a mailing to the registered owner of the property. So if it were a condo owner who either is just absentee, you know, I know a lot of people who just, you know, come into town here and there, whether it was someone who rents, and the same goes for a single-family home, that it's important that they become aware, because sending it to the property in that case would not notify them, and I think they have the right to know.
I think it's a good idea.
And of course, you know, whoever's responsible for the bill should bear the cost of that.
Kelly, your thought, do you want to move it?
Yes.
I have a question about that, I'm not sure. So, the water bill goes to somewhere in, I don't know, Pennsylvania, for example, that's where the notice should go, right? I mean, whatever the billing address is. So you're saying in addition to posting it or sending to the property address?
I think the concern was more on the multifamily side.
Yes.
Right. Usually, when we post the building, it's like that. It would be to the management company, or it would be to the, whoever is running the building, the council. They get the mailing. The posting is just an additional step. I think what Kelly would like us to do is to mail to every, put a mailer into every unit owner. It's an additional step. It's an additional step to try to do that.
Well, my thought is this: if you happen to own, you know, a second home here, and you don't live here, and either the management company or the board, whoever's responsible, isn't paying the bill, and you're just not here to see that notice, sometimes people are gone for years. And if they're not here to see the notice, or they don't receive, you know, the mail that's going to go, like our newsletters just go to the address, they don't go by name. So I think, you know, that's a way to protect, especially, you know, condo unit owners that don't have a homestead exemption.
So would you want them to post it on the door and mail it, or just mail it?
Well, it's kind of mixed.
We would always post, and that really gets the biggest reaction, because there is always somebody in the building that reacts to that, and then if you're a renter, say you're an owner and you're subletting, as soon as you get a notice on your door that the water's going to get shut off in 5 days, that usually gets an immediate response very quickly.
Well, the
Right,
same
so
thing.
if it's a, I'm just saying, so if it's a condo, is the expectation then that somebody from you know, the town will go through, you know, the property appraiser's website to look up the
That's what we.
the mailing address
Looked at
of
that
all of the
today.
different unit owners?
Yes.
I just want to know what the...
That would be the process, and.
Right, that would be the only
and
way to do it, because you don't otherwise have a roster of unit owners and
Yes.
their mailing address.
It becomes you know, it's almost like when you have a variance or something like that and you do a mailing out.
Okay.
It would be that process, except we would be doing it.
Right.
It could be a compromise to do exactly what code does, is they send it to the condo and to the registered agent. That's more doable than to every unit owner. And I don't see the condo as a big issue. The bigger issues are the property owners, like in the business district,
Yes.
because their tenants are the ones paying the bills, or in a home, sometimes when it's rented, because the tenant is the one paying the bill, and that's when you would notify the owner and the renter, because they might not know that they're skipping out on the
Right, well,
on the
that's
water
the whole,
bill.
that's the whole idea. However you
Right.
can work that out to protect, you know, stakeholders, owners, who might not otherwise be aware by physically posting it.
More notice is better, that's why, okay.
And how are the 375 feet notices done? Do the developers still give you the...
Yes, they still
they
give
produce
me a
Okay.
company does the mailing, and they give it to me certified, we double check it, and then it goes
Well,
out.
do you think that company could be engaged at the expense of the responsible party? Would that be easier, because there was a
That's
little
gonna be
worry-
hard to collect on, it's not cheap.
Okay.
In a building that would be, one of the only buildings that really been, one of them that have been problematic is a rental building.
Yeah.
So that still would go just to the property owner, and
And
we
yeah.
would post in,
Yeah.
we'd still post the building,
Mhm.
but we'd only be mailing to one property owner because we're not going to mail them to renters.
Okay, but so we can move on. So you moved it. Is there a
Well-
second? Is really the...
No, I don't want to move it just yet.
You're not gonna-
Then. And I'm also a little concerned, oh, I'm sorry, for discussion?
You kind of have to move it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
You either have to or you don't.
All right, I'll move it for discussion. I'm sorry, Josh.
Second for discussion.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Then I think we're the only city where the town manager has discretion to waive, and I understand why there might be, some obscure case that's a hardship, but are we the only ones who do that? I mean, I think it kind of puts a burden on the manager.
It's not, well, to me, it's not a burden, but if that's the way the council wants to go, I just know that our main goal is to collect the water bill. And I know in the past, I mean, we have had a change in the finance department where Melissa is a lot more on top of and looking at making sure that we don't let anybody go far into arrears before we react. Case in point, one of the buildings that we've had problems in the past is right now 30 days overdue. The company's been notified, and they said, mail us the notice. We have the money to pay. Mail us the notice, and we'll be mailing out a notice. And if we don't get response, we'll be shutting the water off. There's no two ways about it. So, but that's more because they're more reactive than they're going to be more reactive than we have been in the past on certain accounts.
Because this gives you the discretion to waive, but it really doesn't say like anything in between, like to make an arrangement. Maybe it should include that. Do you need to be empowered to be able to,
I don't know if
Make
we're
an
going to
arrangement?
see, once we get into the 3%, fees that are a late fee, I don't think we're going to wait to get to the point where we have to have a payment agreement. I said that's the whole idea of this. I mean, could it happen? I'm sure it could, but I don't think you're going to really see those payment agreements. It's going to be pay up or you're going to get the notice. And it's really it's like anything. If you start writing tickets on a certain part of the highway, people are going to slow down. If you turn off, you notice, start noticing buildings we're not extending. It's going to be like, hey, we got to pay the water bill. We're
I
gonna shut us off.
think it's been a long time that this kind of laid-back culture has been accepted too, so maybe there should be a letter or a little note that goes out with the bills so that, I notice there are a lot of people who like to pay, a lot of single-family homes like to pay kind of quarterly, and that's fine if they wish to do that, but they have to do it in advance.
Well, I think it makes sense if we're changing our ordinance, or we're going to be
Oh, yeah,
imposing
we'll go.
late fees and things like that,
Yeah.
that some notice should go out.
Yeah.
Of
with-
course.
With the next water bill after this is adopted on second reading, assuming it is.
Sure.
And-
Just letting everybody know, and something in the newsletter as well.
I also look forward to seeing the new billing statement, because the way we have it now, is very confusing, and I think the whole thing...
That's going to be a little time for the new...
Well, I suggested too that maybe some of us volunteer and we do a trial period with the new
Okay.
billing, and you could send it to us and see how it works out, send it to like 10 of us.
Just so you know, that new billing system is going to take about a year to implement, and there'll be a break-in period. One of the things that confuse or hurt people is if you roll something out without really having any of the kinks worked out. So I know Melissa has said she wants to make sure our break-in period is going to go good, and we will have, we'll have those test accounts, as you say.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
Let's go to comment. Can we call
so,
the question?
well,
No, we have comment.
we have a comment.
Yeah.
Ms. Newhart.
Go ahead.
Okay, Francis Newhart, 1060 King Concourse. What I want to discuss is the charges for water. The writing of this, it says, and stormwater fees shall be billed to each property owner monthly. Okay, I think what needs to be, we have to differentiate between the commercial from the residential, because our properties, each restaurant, each unit has their own meter. and I feel that the commercial owner and the tenant should be getting this postage, this notice. And a perfect example of this is, and I'm going to use two examples. We just had Orlando who left, and he left me with and Orlando's is the pizza parlor in the back on 95th Street, and he has his own meter. And he left me with a past due reading of $3,284.93, besides not paying the rent. But that's because we've just got a 156% increase.
Excuse me, about what period of time is that? So
Okay,
$3,000, was it overdue for about 3 months? Is that about 3 months worth of water? Just
Well,
ballpark.
Okay, the other one is better, because I have it, Dee, by the way, is very good. She's in the billing department.
That's okay.
But this one here is Unico, which is a restaurant. And Unico is, I'm evicting him now. I can't even get a court case because something, I have it here, Miami-Dade Police Department, because he hasn't paid his water bill. And I just paid out, so I wouldn't get a lien on the property. His water bill is $3,851.15, which I just paid. And this is all broken down from last year. And I did not know this. And the reason I didn't know it is because he was getting discounts or some kind of layaway plan over in the building department. And I didn't want to interfere with that, and I didn't know. So please, if you're going to do this, the business district, the ones who have separate meters, needs to be informed, and the tenant needs to be informed. Thank you. Well, we can't do that.
Yeah, we don't know all the tenants.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's vote?
Vote.
Yeah.
Marlene?
Okay, Councilmember Yaffe.
4.
Councilmember Tricoche.
4.
Councilmember Reed.
4.
Councilmember Leonard.
4.
Vice Mayor Fuller.
4.
Mayor Bruder.
4.
Unanimous.
Okay.
Item 13, approval of an expenditure in the amount of $32,800 for the cost of roof pruning and around the Royal Palms, additional soil, new plants, and it doesn't say it in here, but also irrigation to upgrade the appearance on Cane Concourse. You might have noticed that we have been slowly trying to replace the plants at the base of the Royal. Some of them have basically been crowded out by the Royal Palms. So they suggested trying grinding out the roots, putting in soil. We put in drip irrigation, no more water spraying all over the street. And they go in with a bigger plant, and it'll give us 10 or 12 years of good life and serviceability out of those plants. And that was it. It's being moved from other places in the causeway. All right.
It's okay, Rob.
Call the question.
Call the question.
Councilmember Leonard.
4.
Councilmember Reed.
4.
Councilmember Tricoche.
4.
Councilmember Yaffe.
4.
Vice Mayor Fuller.
4.
Mayor Bruder.
4.
It's unanimous.
Item 14, consideration approval of a private transfer of development rights transaction for 2 dwelling units from Bay Harbor 101 LLC, 1155 101st Street, to the Congress Driftwood LLC, 99279955 East Bay Harbor Drive.
Move it.
Second, this is for it's private, right?
Yeah, these are all
Yes,
private.
all three of them are private.
Okay. Moved in second. Any?
I have one question.
Go
I
ahead.
think since they're all related, this one we're doing now, it's two units at price per unit of $70,000, and the other 2 transfers totaling $7 or $47,500 each. So I was just wondering why the discrepancy, or not the discrepancy, but the variance in price, particularly since they're all related transactions.
Sure. Matthew Amster, law firm of Burkhardt, Riddell, Fernandez, and Larkin, office at 200 South Biscayne Boulevard in Miami. Here today representing Congress Driftwood. Yes, council member, the first transaction, that is item 14, is with a separate entity not related to Congress Group that owns Driftwood. Items 15 and 16 are actually essentially sister companies owned by Congress Group.
I see. Thank you.
So that's the reason I think in other examples. They've actually done transfers for $0.
Right, but on that same thing, I was about, Dory, you got us, so let me say this thing, but I said something to Ron, I just want everybody else to know as well. You know, I'm in favor of these, but I want to make sure that the next time we do an appraisal, these are omitted from it, because I don't believe that they're proper comps. So we have to make sure we note that, because the town, when we sell ours, I don't want to have them discounted because of an internal price.
Good point, like an arm's length.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've excluded certain ones.
No, usually we do, but every once in a while, this, I mean, it's the ones that are $0 or $1, those are easy and obvious.
But these are not nominal.
These are not obvious.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have a notation that they're excluded from further
Do you need a poll
appraisals.
vote for this? No, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 15, don't go too far.
Consideration approval of a private
Just make it
transfer of
simple.
development right transaction for 4 dwelling units from the Congress PHE LLC, 9781 East Bay Harbor Drive, to the Congress Driftwood LLC, 9955 East Bay Harbor Drive.
I'll move it.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 16,
16, consideration approval of a private TDR transaction for 3 dwelling units from Congress Bay Harbor, 10
It is an
One.
extra zero, sorry.
Yeah, okay, East Bay Harbor Drive,
01.
to the Congress Driftwood LLC, 9927, 9955 East Bay Harbor Drive.
Move it.
second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
We'll be launching the kayaks from the back later on.
So, number 17 is mine.
Discussion requested by Mayor Bruder regarding possible town hall renovations.
So we've had this discussion over and over again about moving it, buying property, taking property, and so I think the time has come where we need to look at our own facility that we have here and see what we can do with it. I took some pictures, I walked around and I took some lovely pictures of ripped carpet, wires coming out of the walls, ceiling tiles missing, water damage above me, and I think we've gotten to the point where we really need to think about fixing what we have here, or maybe even calling in another architect or a construction person to see. I mean, I know one of the things they talked about was over the the water tower.
The Public Works
Right.
water tank.
Right, of going over it and being able to build on top of that. But we need to do something, because slowly but surely, the people who work here, it's just falling apart. I mean,
Well, when we did the presentation a while ago,
and we're going for our
40-year certification.
40-year certification, which I'm sure we'll...
Well, at that time, Kimley Horn did a presentation, and we looked at 3 possibilities. One was renovating the building that we have, adding an additional 6,000 square feet, and the 6,000 square feet and the renovation of existing space came to a little less than $7 million, which was expensive, but built into that price was some very aggressive contingency. They built in soft costs for moving town offices around, and also for furniture. A lot of things were thrown in there, plus the engineering fees themselves, which Kimley Horn is a little pricey, there's no doubt about it.
That's what I was going to say.
I think the plan itself was good, but I think the concern was the price. The other thing was to take this building down and then go up and have 20,000 square foot, I think it was 20,000, but 20,000 square foot building for about $10 million. That was another option. Or the third option, which at that point, I think the discussion was kind of going in a lot of different ways, was just to renovate the existing space that we have now and have them look at redesigning it, that it's more user-friendly, because, you know, this was done once before, a long time ago, but, you know, things change, and I'm sure somebody looking at the way even our administrative office is laid out when you walk into Town Hall, it could be done better, and it was in a normal price range of about $1 million. We're addressing on a separate item, like we started to just do the basic engineering work for the generator to power up the whole facility. When we were looking at the $6 million plan, that included a new roof for this building, a new roof for the other on the building department side, new generator, upgrading the electric, new air conditioning, new, renovate this space. So, we can go, there's a couple of ways you can go. But I think your original suggestion was to have somebody come in and just look at the plan and evaluate it to see if it
Well,
was within reason, or...
Right, I looked at, first I find them to be extremely expensive, and I don't find them to be as creative personally as I think they can. I would like somebody else to come, look at the plans, somebody who's in construction, a builder, an actual builder, come and look, because I believe that we could save a lot of money with somebody who actually is in construction, and I think that we can do it for less than what they're claiming. We don't have, we have champagne taste, but we have a beer budget, so we need to give them our budget and sort of say, this is what we would like to spend. What can you do for this amount of money?
The number one thing we have to figure out is where. That's because before they determine all that, we've got to figure out where we would like to focus our efforts. We have no idea right now. We've had this discussion.
Well, we need to I think we need to focus what we have here, the police, the facility that we actually have. If you have walked around the buildings with wires sticking out, ripped carpet, mismatched tiles on the floor, it's not conducive even for the people who work here. Air conditionings that aren't working.
I have to take some there have been requests to replace some of these things, and I've been, holding back on some things because I don't want to make a repair or put a lot of money into something that might be, at that time, we're going to renovate, and I don't want to spend money twice on
I
something.
understand that, but we have to we as the council have to come to some kind of conclusion of what we're going to do, because as we wait and wait, we're going to buy a generator, and so instead of spending $300,000 or whatever, or the air conditioning might break and we have to then spend money in a chilling system or whatever, well, you know what, and then we decide not to do anything here, or the plans change, that's money thrown out. That's money, and now we're having our 40-year recertification, and you need a roof, and you need this. Well, all that's money that you're going to spend. I'd rather just spend it one time and do it right than to spend it and then come back and say, oh, okay, well, you know what, now we need a bigger generator because we're expanding. So now we've taken $350,000 and basically thrown it. That's not good business. That's just not, we need to decide, are we going to fix the place? Or we're at that point, because you have an inspection coming, you have generators coming, and people actually have to work here, and
we put off the generator.
In a correct place.
Yeah. We rented a generator. I think if you've driven behind the building, you've seen it there. That's in case. God willing.
I don't know.
Do you would like, I could have somebody come in. I know I have spoken to Tom Telesco's son, who's in the business, to if he would be agreeable just to look at the plans and give his opinion. I know he does a lot of construction. I know he does high-end construction.
What about thoughts from the P&Z? That's these guys, the planning and zoning. It's all architects or.
If they want to look at it, but it's really just a rendering. They're going to give you, does it look good?
Well, I think when we get into the actual components of what we're going to do, we definitely need to have a sit-down with our
P&Z,
our own
definitely.
architects.
But my last experience with P&Z added a few $1 million to the parking garage. So they do have a lot of good ideas that usually equate to more money.
No, but they have a good idea as to whether or not it's worth trying to renovate or what we have to do
Yes,
here.
I know.
They can give us a better idea.
Well, we have to do something.
I would mention, though, I don't think that this facility has enough space for the current staff. Even if I always thought that the two options were whether or not we were going to add to this facility and renovate it, or build a new facility. But I don't think we were ever really seriously contemplating just renovating this as far as the total square footage, because...
Well, I didn't say that.
I just want to make sure we're on the same...
No, we're not. I
Okay.
said we you can do it in phases.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about a lot of money. You can do it in phases, and on top of that, like I just said to you, we can have a master plan and then phase one, phase two, because you're talking about $6-7 million. We have to
Well, I
$8
mean,
million.
I don't think those numbers are very accurate.
Well,
I think-
that's what's on the table now, whether they're accurate or not. We need to move forward somehow, some way. And if we're not going to build a new one, which we can discuss among up here, we need to do something. We need to move forward in some way. Kelly?
You just want a design, right? You want like more of a design to look at. What if we were to contact one of the local architecture schools and maybe even offer like a very nominal scholarship?
Yeah, like
and
$1,000.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that, $2,500, and then, or, ask the dean of the school if there could be like a project that the kids compete for, since, and to do it like the most economical, the most creative and economical.
No, but even though I like you to try to bring in, the students, the problem is anything we design here is not just because it's going to be practical for the purpose of the office space, but we need to have input that they may not have with regard to a municipal office, which is, we may want part of it elevated, we want the police station a different way, we may need power a different direction.
Give them the scope and then let
But
them
I'm saying, I'm not
design
sure if they're trained for that type of...
Well, we could ask if they would
We could
even
ask,
do it,
but
they
it's
might
not
have a
standard building.
prohibition.
That's fine, but it's not a standard building.
I
it's,
agree with Kelly, though. I think even if they give us baselines, right, and they give us some ideas, I mean, quite frankly, we've already paid one for something that is completely underwhelming.
Oh, that was awful.
And unrealistic. I don't think a group of students could do any worse than that,
Maybe not.
For an 80th of the cost.
I think Kimley Horn, part of that exercise, besides the renderings, they did spend time with every department, and they took a lot of input from us to what they needed. So that interior layout really was, a lot of thought went into it for the police, for the admin.
Well, maybe-
I know,
So maybe we send them notes. Maybe we give them like the bullet pointed high notes.
I just wanted to say, that's a great idea if you want to have the design or direction of, but you can't bid, it's no good. You can't bid those out. It's not a registered architect, it's not somebody, you can't put that out to bid.
Well,
Right.
So,
And redesign it if we like.
if you can, the shell, what it's gonna look
To give them
like.
like some ideas, that's all.
Yeah,
That's all
I
it
get
can
it.
be.
Well, but I mean, why couldn't we, if they're architects or they have like a professor sign off and it's a
Let's do this
plan?
right. I mean, let's figure out how, we have to figure out where we want to be, and that's the thing. And then poor Melissa's going to have to figure out how to pay for it, so.
Funny that we're having this discussion the day we go almost back to rollback. Like we're
Yeah,
we're-
rollback.
there's a rollback.
In her mind right now, she's going, well, they had the rollback 1 year, I'm not sure.
Next year.
Building the
Sorry,
building.
after Isaac's little statement.
Well, but
to
we
you as
have
well.
to do, we just can't, we have to do something. I mean, they're...
Can we-
So the question is what? Like, what do we want to do?
That's the question. What...
well, I think there's still some concern that the design was subpar, or the cost of it certainly was
The cost
questionable.
was ridiculous.
Do you wanna-
The combination for them was
Yeah.
terrible. The design was fair at best, and the cost was astronomical, so that
If you
was
want,
a
you
bad
should have a construction guy that actually builds these things, come in and tell us.
I quoted him what it would cost per construction per
can't do
foot,
that
and it was a
either.
fraction, and I know this stuff. I mean, these guys made no sense.
The design itself was not something that, I'll speak for myself, but from my memory of the meeting, no one said, oh my gosh, I opened it up and I thought,
To the
yes.
contrary, we said it was...
Everyone was like, oh.
Okay, so in other words, we didn't like, if you didn't get the memo, we didn't like the design.
got it.
We don't like, we don't, it was too much money and it was just
Too much
way-
vanilla ice cream.
Okay, it was just blah.
But it also, there's another couple things too. I've had, when we did this last year, I had many conversations with the manager and staff, and some of them were very heated. I think that whoever designed it did not do their job very well in looking at the possibilities of what potentially is on the property. One of the big thing, the real, the 800-pound gorilla no one wants to talk about is the lift station. And I am of a very different opinion than staff and whoever created that garbage as to what potentially could be done in the potential of building a new facility, keeping in mind that you have the lift station there. And for example, one of the things that I talked to staff about was the ability to change the sewer line. And the first go around was, it's not possible. Well, of course it's possible. Then it came to the cost. It was exponentially too expensive. As it turned out, my estimate was exactly what the town's engineer was, which was $50,000. $50,000, you can change the line, and that freed up the parking. You know, you have to keep in mind, we have that parking back there, and the idea of losing our parking was just not, in my opinion, you know, doable. You can't, we don't have a lot of parking as it is back there.
Okay.
So I want to keep in mind that I want to bring, and by the way, the cost, remember when we talked about this, the cost was on par with what the O was selling their units for. I mean,
I'm not sure the 50, I mean, there's the gravity fed or the sewage that comes in, and then there's the force main that goes out.
No, I know.
I'm not sure which one we were talking about
Let's
redirecting.
come to the conclusion of what we're going to do.
Are we going to get a new assessment, or are we going to, I think the other option is that we reach out to the schools and have them take a look at it.
No, I think we have to find out, and I still say the same thing before, we need to come to a consensus where we want to build it first, because the design, the school could come back with a great design, but if it doesn't fit here or the other location, it's...
But I think the other location, but hold on, wait, I think the other location is, right now it looks like it's out, right? They're not going to pay for it to be decided on who's going to get the air
It's not
rights.
that, we don't have, in my mind, we don't have the money. And I'm not about to extend ourselves to the point.
Right, but we
With
had
the-
even gone to them and said, you guys determine who has the air rights and who owns this property and let us know, and they said no.
I met with them. They were supposed to do a deck action across the street and find out who has the air rights.
They didn't do it.
They didn't do it. It's for their benefit to do it. I have no idea why they don't want to finally get it done. They haven't done it. It
Right,
would have
but
worked out
for me,
perfectly, but
that's-
also, no, it would have been the perfect location, it would have been cheaper for us.
I don't think
The
so.
problem is, at this point, there was an ability at the time to work something out. I think that you know,
That
it's
should
gone.
So, but that's what I'm saying, I think at this point, what other space are we talking about doing this on? This is the space of it. That would have been great, and you know I
It would have
supported that, but this, I think
Would
this is our
the,
site.
would the council be interested in, see if we could pursue maybe like Surfside, like some kind of
No.
public-private
Yes.
partnership?
No.
Why not?
Because I don't like it. I don't like private parks. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of giving away my land for somebody else to build me something and then having to share a facility with somebody else.
Now, there are ways to do
look
it.
at
It
it.
doesn't have to be that, because there might be
Right.
something still with a public-private partnership, even potentially back across the street, if they'll finally come to their senses. There are ways to do things, and I say, may as well open up the thought process, but, you know, if somebody comes to us and we don't like it, we say no.
In that case, you mentioned going to a particular builder who is part of an estate. You might not want to cross those streams. Is that a problem? You know? You mentioned a builder and
Oh, I
he's
was-
a part owner in the 1111
Yeah, to
building.
Tom Telesco's firm
The
to
estate
just
is not
review
one
the
of the
plan?
owners of-
Well,
No,
that's
his
the one we,
ex-
that's
well, that's not his mother.
That's not the air rights issue.
Okay,
That's not the
so
air-
there, well, you know better, I'm not a lawyer, but
They
there's
have to-
no
they have- they-
conflict with
all
that
that stuff-
individual? I'm just saying.
That they have between themselves, I have no idea what their situation is.
So is there another option than the site that we're on?
He doesn't.
No relation?
What?
Let's not,
I don't think we should.
Let's concentrate on Mr. Earl and I talking about this. I mean, I do think we need to come up with a decision as to whether we want to stay here and then find temporary facilities if we're going to knock this down and do something or substantially renovate it, or find another site. I don't, you know. And if there are some public-private opportunities, then I think that we, you know, when the time comes, if that arises, you need to tell us about them. You know,
okay.
and so that would be one of the options that we can explore, and we can make the decision as to whether a public-private option is viable or not.
Yeah, I will.
The land is right next, is the land that we're
I-
putting the amphitheater
Right.
on, so we wouldn't.
Well,
I'm open to, you know, the partnerships, just to hear about it
Right.
if you
Yeah, it
have
doesn't hurt to
it.
hear what they have to
Right.
say. Or we can build potentially over.
I'm not sure that's even doable, but
Well,
just saying.
How long do they need to know whether they are even interested in it so that we know?
I'm sure I'll know in the next,
No, but the way you would do it is, I'm sorry, you would have to put an RFP
You put it out.
You have
Yeah.
to put an RFP out to
Advertising.
engage interest.
So is that what you all want
And
to do?
then
You
what
wanna
you can
put
do is,
something
I
out
mean,
there?
keep in mind, I mean, the town's facility really extends from right here all the way, including the parking lot,
It's over
right
an
up
acre.
abutting
Right.
the
The Wills property, right.
the patio.
Usually you have to identify the site, you have to tell them what you want on the site, and then they'll tell you if they can put what they want and what you want and what the deal's gonna be. But we have to give them some information.
And it has to be non-binding, you know.
The only site we have to share is what? What do we have?
No, I'm saying the only thing we could do is, we could approach Whittles about potentially doing something over the parking of the street. In other words, extending this building potentially so that it goes a little bit further over.
Yeah, I already talked
Park.
about
I mean, we've talked about different concepts, but.
Yeah. Yeah, I already talked to them about that.
I know, it's not
I talked to all the property
Well,
owners about
it's
that.
definitely a long shot.
Yeah,
It's a long shot, I'm just saying.
But that would, the only way to gauge interest is to do an RFP as far as the,
Well, that might be the way to do it if there's, I mean, yeah, I don't know.
There's a site.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. We have to
Right.
figure out
the
where we're
council will
going.
always reserve the right to reject any.
No, but, well,
So Mary, okay, so what?
There are professionals that develop
Yes.
these, to put it out. There are people that actually do these
Oh,
things.
no, of course, but but usually, like you said, you already say, this is the site, what can we do with it?
Right.
Here, we're coming in essentially blind, saying, tell us where we can do it before we even go to that,
Okay.
so
Let's
nobody
hear
knows.
from the public. Mrs. Newhut.
Francis Newhut, 1060 Kane Concourse. I finally got my husband to write something, so it's hard reading his handwriting, but this is
You should pull the microphone down a little, because we can't hear you.
this is the opinion of my husband, who never writes anything or reads anything about the town. This is from him, so excuse me if I'm not reading it well. Since we are losing significant tax revenue to tax-exempt, cash-rich institutions such as Church by the Sea, why can't the existing town hall be renovated? Surfside received an interesting proposal for a public-private building. This concept should also be explored. Do we really need the financial burden and expense of building a new town hall? Are we adding additional employees or services? Look what happened in Opelika when they built the new town hall. Other less costly alternatives should be explored, including possibly merging with our wealthier Bell Harbor, who's in the process with their town hall. That's what he wrote. My question is, Church by the Sea, just to let you know, bought a beautiful, beautiful medical office building on 95th Street. And that's over 10,000 square feet with municipal parking across the street. And that was it wasn't only $6 million, they paid $6 million. But when we were offered it, and I mentioned it to a council member, he only wanted 4.5, and it was already built out, and it was already beautiful. And I don't understand why it went to a church, because eventually that's going to be tax exempt as well. So I'm very surprised that we didn't grab that property, the town. That would have been for the police station, and we could have solved a lot of these problems.
I looked at it for a while, and never knew elections.
And also, you know, the economy's not that great. I mean, there'll be other buildings probably that'll come up. It's easier to renovate than it is to build. Thank you.
Thank you. So, what have we concluded here, ladies? What are we going to do? Are we going to...
My opinion hasn't changed. I think we need to really seriously consider the prospect of a long-term plan of building a new facility. And, you know, I just don't see how renovating this facility is going to bring it up to the standard where, like other people have mentioned, you want to have it be up to our standard and the code and sustainable, and you want all these things. You know, this is not that building. This is not designed. There's no windows here. It's, you know, there's no light coming in. You know, and to be quite honest, I mean, I've for the last couple of years, you know, this is one of the things that just never came about. The property owners that are adjacent to us are not interested in doing a deal. You know, they've been approached. on more than one occasions. There's 6 different property owners. They don't want to do a deal, so there's no point in an RFP in trying to entice them. As far as private property owners coming in and doing a partnership, I don't see how that's feasible considering the complexities of the areas that cannot be developed without looking at the private properties. Without going to King Concourse, you don't have a deal. You don't have enough land to make that worth it. Unless if you're talking about a completely different site. The only things feasible for this site is to renovate the property, which I'm not in favor of, or building something new. But that's really the only decisions you have, unless if you're going to talk about completely different property.
I go back to the same thing. I just need ideas for where we're putting it. It's wherever we decide, and then we can make the next step. I just
Well,
don't
let's
know.
say let's say, like, it's here. This is the property, because we own the land.
Yeah.
We already have the land. If we buy something else to sell this land, will not be...
You can't sell it.
Well,
No, but we'd also need to function, police force and everything else as well for the period while this is renovated, or torn down and built, so we have to worry about that as well.
We have to decide, are we tearing it completely down, or that's the thing. Are you tearing it down, you're taking a bulldozer and knocking it down, or are you going to renovate? You can renovate. You don't
It depends on the
necessarily-
costs here.
Right,
but
but we need to figure that out. We can't just say, well...
I think we need to hire a different, probably better firm to come up with a more realistic approach of what things really cost. It's great to have people come up with ideas of what it could look like. That's secondary. The first primary is the cost. What does it cost? And no student's going to be able to give you a hard cost. That's why you hire a firm. But the firm that was hired gave us not, in my opinion, a very realistic approach, because the bottom line cost was, like Josh mentioned, it was the same price of what a unit was going for at the O.
Okay, so are we should we add this to it? It sounds like there's some question, and I was under the understanding that before I became on the council, we looked at multiple sites and made a determination as to what the reality of it was. But let's add back in then, looking at all available sites and, trying to figure out what makes the most sense then.
Well, there aren't that many. The thing is, the sites, some of them are no longer really viable. For example, one of the ones we talked about, which I think we decided, and let's just make sure whether it's on or off the table, I know you liked it, was on the Causeway.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's viable, so let's
no.
eliminate that one.
Okay.
Second is obviously where we are right now.
Right.
Third is somehow
Garage.
working out something, is the garage, and the
Building
space
another
where
floor.
right next to it, next to the community center.
No, building another floor. That was another option.
But I think we needed more than one level. And if I remember correctly, the structural integrity allowed for, maybe I'm wrong, but the structural integrity allowed for one more floor. And I think
It's rated for that, but for parking.
Right,
Parking.
right, but for others, so you might be able to 2 for office
And then
space.
you also run into the issue of during construction, you have to shut down the entire garage.
So there are issues there. Still dealing with potentially across the street, I don't think that's really viable right now. I would love it if it was, but it's not. Or 4, working with one of the local property owners, which is, again, also, we may be hitting ahead, yeah.
I talked to a couple of them, and just last month, and the answer was no.
So then it sounds like we're going back to, this is the site that
Here,
we're talking about.
I told you.
So then, I would agree with Jordan at that point. We're looking at re-engaging a different, more dynamic firm to come in and give us an estimate and give us some
But I want
appraisals.
somebody in construction, because I've had some experience, and sometimes when you have plans and then you take them to your contractor, it's very different.
So I can attest to that.
Are very different, and you need somebody who's in construction who can tell you basically, okay, well, you can do this, but cement is going to cost what.
It's going up. It's
Well,
going
what
up
I'm saying, you
considerably.
actually need somebody who does architectural and who does construction.
So let's do this. Ron, can you just...
That was horrible.
Can you provide just a general idea, do your own math, figure out how many square feet you actually need? Obviously there's additional cost, we know, for additional kinds of wiring and different kind of, fortifications that are specific for the police department and everything else, because we're mixing it all together. But figure out what square footage you need, and let's use that as the base before the design comes in, and just get an idea right there of construction here for tear down and construction, and then we'll supplement from there. We can get that pretty easily.
Okay. Like,
Right.
that's easy to do.
Okay.
And I would project for some future need too, obviously. Like, we know that you have more buildings going up, so you may need some more support staff, or whatever it is, project for that as well, please.
Without getting too, we don't want this to be...
Yeah, but then,
No, we don't want to be
is that
stuck.
the-
Exactly.
is that the
People in
consensus
closets,
that we're
you know.
going to go out again?
Yeah, I mean, well, when you're going to a firm to put out plans, you know, we pick the firm because we have an approved list by state statute, so we have our list. So we would have to pick a different firm, and we have a list that's recently been approved. It's not even a year old.
Can we see some too, for these firms? Like, I'd like to see, can we see some of their previous designs, you know, that they've done for other people that are similar, so that we have an idea of what it is that they've
For the
actually
design
done?
Henry Horn
right
was
now, let's
the-
just get an idea, you know, what
No,
they're
I'm
going
saying
to cost.
before we make a decision
Right,
on
but-
who we choose, I'd like some references, essentially.
Well, I'm just only talking about construction right now because there's been a significant change in the cost of concrete and steel over the last few months. So that being said...
Make a present for that.
Yeah, that's
Well,
true.
I'm just saying,
And
that's
as a
why
result,
a
let's just get
construction
the,
guy can really, you say, I need 6,000 square feet, and they can tell you approximately.
in this location, what it's going to
At this
cost.
location, what it's gonna cost. A
Okay.
construction,
Demolition as well.
whatever it is,
Yeah.
a rough idea of, you know,
And then we can work from there. We don't need to go one of the approved people for just get an idea of what standard construction is per square foot in this location for that, for an industrial style commercial.
And you know what you may want to do also is, you know, there's a lot of, remember, we're not the first ones that come up with the concept of redoing a city hall. There's a lot of cities that have done a city hall in the last couple of years. You know, it wouldn't hurt to get some ideas from other cities that have done their city halls to see, you know, the tricks of their trade, how did they do it, what firms did they use, you know, are they happy with what they did, you know. There's some cities that did it for lower costs. Obviously, the times are different, but, you know, we should be cognizant of that too.
Right. So let's do that, maybe bring it back in November, and, or October, whenever.
November meetings get a little longer.
A little longer, but then we, you know, you have a break, but let's move this along, so.
Okay.
All right, cool. Motion to close?
Oh, yes.
Second.
All right. Okay, thank you.
That was just